Call this meeting of the Village Board to order. Will you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all very much. I think, Scott, we will start with a couple of mayoral appointments. If you could do that.
Yes, resolved that Mayor Manger appoints and requests a motion for the board, from the Board of Trustees to approve James Ryan to be appointed to the position of laborer in the Highway Department at a salary of $48,490.75, and that is effective Monday, December 1, 2025.
Yes, I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Go ahead, Scott.
Whereas the Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance maintains a list of approved per diem paramedics, which the ambulance chief can call upon to provide coverage when necessary, and whereas salaries for the use of per diem have been provided for in the budget, and whereas the village has reviewed and evaluated the credentials of potential candidates in addition to the available and approved per diem paramedic list, now therefore be it resolved that Nicholas Noble is approved for addition to the per diem paramedic list for the Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance, and that is effective December 1, 2025.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
By the way, I believe his brother was with our police department.
He is.
Yeah, okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Whereas the Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance maintains a list of approved per diem paramedics, which the ambulance chief can call upon to provide coverage when necessary, and whereas the salaries of the use of per diem have been provided for in the budget, and whereas the village has reviewed and evaluated the credentials of potential candidates in addition to the available and approved per diem paramedic list, now therefore be it resolved that Michael Matthews is approved for addition to the per diem paramedic list for the Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance, that's effective December 1, 2025.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks, Scott.
Whereas the village treasurer has recommended a salary adjustment for the deputy treasurer, Kelly Crackey, in recognition of her strong performance, and whereas the Board of Trustees acknowledges her strong performance and finds it appropriate that she to maintain compensation that aligns with the responsibilities of the position, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves and authorizes a salary adjustment for Deputy Treasurer Kelly Crackey at $76,579.52, and that is effective December 1, 2025. And let me just add that actually the treasurer had done a survey of similar positions throughout most of Suffolk County, certainly through the east end of Suffolk County, and that salary represents probably almost exactly the median of what the earnings are for a specialized knowledge position.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Second.
And I just want to ask if the treasurer would like to say anything. And just say that, I believe Kelly will also be taking on some additional duties, and so it's warranted that she get an increase. But go ahead, please, Julie.
Yes, Kelly has gone above and beyond in our department. She's my right-hand man, right-hand woman, I should say. And when I'm not in, she signs payroll checks. She signs vouchers, checks. She is cross-trained in doing payroll and accounts payable, so she's really really important to this the finance department. And she's just a true asset to our team, and really is there to support. When I was on a medical leave with my hamstring, it was her first audit that she ever had to go through, and she had to do it unfortunately alone because my surgery date was the day that the auditors were coming, and she handled it with flying colors, and she's just shown to be such a true asset to this village, and I really hope that this board can recognize the true asset that she is.
I'd also like to add that there's a bit of a reorganization under your shop, and that she's going to be getting more responsibility. You should describe
Additionally, yes. So she'll be taking on more duties and more higher level responsibilities that she'll be facilitating. Yes.
Thank you, Julie, very much.
Thank you.
Unless anyone has any questions for Julie. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now we're going to go to board presentations, and we have one by the co-chair of our Planning Commission, Christian Pico. He's going to talk about the battery energy storage systems, otherwise known as BESS. And the town, actually, you can sit down, please, at the table. I know that the town has adopted some legislation concerning BESS, and we were going to look at doing something similar in the village to obviously protect the village, but why don't you just give, if you would, your report, and I know you have a deck that you were going to go through. Is that correct, Christian?
Yes, it is. I'm
Does
trying to get
Sage
it.
have that?
We're
or you
working
have
on
it?
it.
As long as you're able to show it on the screen.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Can I fill some dead air and
Yeah.
just say, the first time I heard Christian speak on this topic, he was responding to something that was happening that seemed a little bit unfortunate or fairly aggressive in Hampton Bays. And I personally took some of his comments at the time to be not alarmist, but very maybe overly worried, and I've changed my mind. He wasn't overly worried, he was spot on, and I know he's spent an awful lot of time on this topic since. So, and I've seen him present some of this material, and so I'm looking forward to the presentation. But I'll just say up front, I appreciate all the work and
Maybe we'll
knowledge.
have to look at the deck that you brought with you in hard copy, Christian.
Sure, it'd be great if I could share it for the public to see it, though I understand it is in the pack. I'm just on a struggle bus to find a share button. Can I share a document, Sage?
Would you be able to help Mr. Pico at all, please?
There we go.
Oh, excellent, Christian. Thank you, Sage. Oh, look, we're in Rome now.
Yeah, no, okay. All right, great. I think we're there. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Rob. The mayor had asked the Planning Commission to look at issues surrounding battery energy systems, look at indeed the code of Southampton Town that was recently put forward in June. And what we're trying to address is some issues and offer some solutions. So the issues are this. The New York State, 6 years ago, passed what's called the New York State Climate Leadership and Community Preservation Act to promote BESS with the rise of renewable energy. Promoters are looking for sites throughout the state. And the Southampton Village zoning code does not regulate land use for BESS. So that was the issue. And obviously, responsibility that we all have is to promote public safety and minimize the hazards, and we'll talk about this, that BESS could have, environmental impacts. And the solution, obviously, is to codify the land use for BESS consistent with recent revision with the Southampton Town. So that's the issue. I'll go in the solution, and I'll go through some of the facts. First of all, you know, what is a BESS? It's basically a system of connected batteries that are packaged in containers or buildings. It stores electricity, it charges, it stores excess electricity from the grid and from renewable sources. It holds that electric energy as a chemical, and that's really what's most important, is to understand that the chemistry of a BESS is actually chemical and not electrical when the energy is saved. And we'll get to that. And the discharge, it releases that stored electricity, that chemical in stored electricity form back in the grid when either demand is high or alternate energy are unavailable. So let's just briefly talk about what are some of these chemistries that are involved, and have they improved to eliminate risk, was really the question we wanted to ask ourselves. So lithium ion is the most prevalent BESS technology that we find. It could be either what's called LFP, which is lithium iron phosphate. That's the industry standard. But it has what's called lowest energy density. Alternatively, there is nickel, manganese, cobalt, and sorry if it sounds like a chemistry class if you remember your element table, but this is more kilowatts per unit, but lower thermal stability, and we'll talk about thermal stability in a minute. There are some emerging chemistries and some improvements in BESS that we have seen, and these are done at the expense of cost and energy density. So we have what are called flow batteries that you'll find. These store energy in external liquid electrolyte tanks, and that does lower the fire risk. We also have sodium ion, which offer better performance in cold weather, which wouldn't be applicable in this area in the Northeast, or sodium sulfur, which are relatively higher energy density, but costly in high temperature containment. I think the issue is that we know promoters are balancing profit against public safety risk, and that's what we're dealing with. So we have had a number of what we'll call repeated episodes, which are thermal runaway. There was one in Surprise, Arizona, called a McKinnon BESS in April 2019. So here's what happened when first responders opened the door to investigate a mixture of gas ignited in a sudden explosion, putting these first responders at risk, and 4 firefighters were seriously injured in that particular incident. If we look next, we have another one called a dormant energy storage facility. This was in Arizona in April of 22 in Chandler. The owner of this BESS was a well-known electrical utility, AES Corp. This was a thermal event as well. Automatic sprinklers did work, and other safety systems were deployed automatically, but they were unable to control that event. And as a precaution for hazardous gas leaks, the authorities declare an immediate evacuation of the zone with a quarter-mile radius, including temporarily closing a local freeway.
Christian, sorry, so basically what you're saying, in some situations, the thermal event or some other fault or catalyst causes a runaway type reaction that risks fire, explosion, releases of gas, or some combination of all of that.
It does, and one way to put these fires out is obviously water, and a lot of it for days, and that water can go into the aquifer loaded up with all sorts of chemicals, and we'll talk about what happened now in East Hampton. But before I go there, I just want to briefly talk about Hampton Bays in the BESS proposal that we all heard about in 2021. And by the way, I want to acknowledge Resident Rome Arnold, who worked with me on all of this, who was very early speaking with the Commission for the last couple of years about this project and why and what the issues were with it. And this was a project by Rhineland Energy, who asked the town of Southampton to authorize a 100 megawatt facility in Hampton Bays. Now let me tell you what 100 megawatt really means. Think of a power wall in a house, which you've all heard of or may have seen. That's roughly about 10 kilowatt. Think about an electrical vehicle, a Tesla. That battery is 75 kilowatt. You need 1,000 kilowatt to make 1 megawatt. This was a 100 megawatt facility. So you can multiply how many equivalent that is. It's a lot. This was going to be, so this went through the planning board process. It even received a SECRA negative declaration, which means that it had no significant adverse environmental impact. Yes, so I would agree with the mayor on that. That was kind of an interesting issue for us because it straddled a critical infrastructure point. It was located east of the canal between Highway 27 and Long Island Track in what we would call a critical infrastructure point. And while only Hampton Bay's residents were alarmed by it, we quickly spoke with the mayor and thought that any community east of the canal should be very worried about this project, because if there was an issue, very remote possibility, but if there was, it would put the entire East End at a significant risk if this went on for 3 or 4 days. Imagine in the middle of the week, we have, 35,000 cars that come across. None of these people could go home. It would be a complete disaster for the community. Look, during the summer of 2023, the board of the town instituted a 6-month moratorium on, after we had actually in East Hampton a fire, and I'll talk about this in a minute, and the project was thankfully later abandoned. What went on in East Hampton was the Cove Hollow Road. This was in the summer of 2022.
23 it says on the...
23, I'm sorry, indeed. And a lot of things happened. This was in May 23. And smoldering battery fire in the building housing the system took about 30 hours to ensure the fire was fully extinguished. It led to road closures in East Hampton, temporary disruptions to Long Island Railroad service, and a lot of concerns about the water runoff. There was a large volume of water used to put this out, and that went into the aquifer, all that water, potentially carrying toxic substance and other byproducts of burning lithium-ion components. So that was a big issue in East Hampton. And then a month or two later, we had other issues in the state. One fire in Warwick, New York, which is, if I recall, just northwest of New City, and in Chaumont, New York, in the northeastern quadrant of the state, also during the summer of 2023. So that obviously caught Governor Hochul's attention, and she convened what's called an interagency fire safety working group. Their recommendations was some greater setbacks for buffers from residential areas. We'll talk about that in a minute. More robust on-fire safety measures and systems for to contain contaminated runoff water. New York CERTA had a meeting with a number of mayors from Suffolk County last week in Stony Brook. And a number of fire chiefs to explain what that new regulation was. Rome Arnold actually went on our behalf to listen to this for a few hours. And it was really what NYCERTA was trying to do, is to share with various communities in the state of New York what those new regulatory recommendations were, and I think the feedback I understand from the meeting is really underwhelming in terms of some of these recommendations. But it's important to note, as a result of this, that a new Southampton Town Best Code was adopted finally in June of 2025, and we'll talk about what it is. Severely limiting larger BESS like the Hampton Bay project, which was 100 megawatt, and now it's all capped at 5. So the town, you know, from having a negative secret declaration on that particular project, went from one end to the other in a far better code, which is in, for those who are interested in looking at code, section 330 of their code. It is 20-odd pages specifically to BESS, and they did a pretty good job. It's important to note that whilst we think that technology has improved, even recently, and that was in January of 25, another thermal runaway this year happened, very well known in Moss Landing. This is in Monterey, California. In this particular case, more alarming, that facility was built with batteries into individual containers, some of the new standards, with its own fire suppression system, and the system failed, and the thermal runaway lasted a whole of 5 days. Toxic smoke plumes there, hazardous gas, hydrogen fluoride, and authorities evacuated the area 8 square miles. Which affected almost 2,000 residents. And Highway 1, which we're all familiar with, was closed. And this just happened this year. So let's look now at the town code. They've simplified it quite a bit. They have 3-tier, limiting it, let's start with tier 2, to no more than 5 megawatts, from 600 kilowatt to 5 megawatts in light industrial zones with setbacks of 300 feet from residential area. This is in a lot of at least 2 acres and requiring planning board special exception review. Tier 1 is more for commercial and industrial districts, which is from 80 to 600 kilowatts on an acre with a similar regulatory review. What's called BTM, behind the meter, is what a lot of homeowners would have with a solar panel. What they've done in the town of East Hampton is to limit those to an 80 kilowatt aggregate for these power walls that can be up to 20 each. Speaking to the building inspector this morning, looking at some of those limited solar installations in the village, there are none that are to a limit of 80 kilowatt. In fact, most of them, and because of the code of the village, it is rather limiting in terms of solar panel aggregates and wouldn't require anything like what the town code has, but 80 kilowatt is going to be basically 4 power walls doing this. And also, as an aside, important to note that the village which installed these solar panels in various locations, parking lot, and other first responders buildings, none of them are going into any BTMs, they're going straight into the grid. That's important to note for the community. So that's the Southampton Code that was adopted in June of this year. In terms of the Southampton Village, when you think about what I said earlier, for larger BESS, it would only apply to the light industrial zone. So here on this map, which was prepared by Alex Wallach, our village planner, as we worked together on this, he's outlined on Marina Drive what would be if you were to adopt the town code, what would be the lots that would be possible for a BESS. And that's within that red triangle here.
How many of those are over 2 acres, or 2 acres or larger?
Wasn't Alex?
That was another
Yeah, so most of them you could see to the railroad are 1 acres. There are a few that are more. But most of them would be not for, because you need at least 2 acres for a tier 2.
Yeah.
But you could have someone acquire
Correct.
neighboring lots and then.
It could be, that's right.
Assemble, yeah.
So when we looked at the code, which I thought was fairly well done, there was one critical several, but one of the critical observations for discussion here is that if the village were to do anything to adopt a code in its land use and adapt some of the stuff that's done by the town, what should be included, since the town only has 300 feet to a residential, is to add to the language that it would be residential, commercial, and critical infrastructure, such as the Long Island Railroad and County Road 39, because the last thing you want to do is to halt traffic like in a Moss Landing situation. That's the thought as to how to do this. One of the other things that we would add to the code is that a lot of these projects, you build them in a community, and then if something happens, the promoters will file for bankruptcy and disappear, and you're on your own to pay for the cleanup. So I think some of the bonding longer term would be a better idea to really have, in some form or another, the promoters pay for these cleanups. And we didn't find any of that, unfortunately, in the Southampton Town Code, despite the fact that we flagged that to them several times, but without a response. So the conclusion, obviously, is to propose a best legislation similar to Southampton Town for the village, 116 code there for land use best with stricter setback. And then the question for you guys is to figure out whether this is a nice to have or a must have. So speaking to the building inspector this morning, no one so far has come up with any discussion, request, or fast tracking a BES. It's a question whether the land acquisition would make it economical, because these are expensive lots. It would be fairly complex to do it. There are probably other areas they could do this in. Certainly the PSCG lot north of, or east, north of the railroad, east of, was it David White's?
Yeah.
Is if I was a promoter, that'd be a better site for anything, and that's outside our
National
village.
Grid site.
It's a national grid site, yeah, and that's outside our
Outside
village
the
boundaries.
yeah.
There's not much we could do about it. Having said that, given what the town has now put in place, I'm not even sure they'd get the 300 feet setback necessary for that lot anyway. So, you know, we can do it. From 20 pages of that section 330 of the code, we can make it simpler, adapt it. It's still 5-6 pages in our own code. It would require a reasonable amount of work on from the Planning Commission, but also from Alex Wallach and perhaps tax our counsel on this. So really, you know, what's for you is to understand the issue, get the facts, you have them now, and think about how much you wanted this project to take on, and really keeping in mind public safety and the implications for that. Any questions?
Typically, so if you have a house with solar panels and you want to save electricity, what is the limit on that? Is that the 20 kilowatts that you talked about, or is it more? So
you could install power walls in your house,
right.
And one way to do it, and the state of Vermont has rebates pushing people to do this. I understand the state of New York is thinking of doing the same. And you can install a power wall. You probably need at least 3 of them to be fully functional. They would work for a few hours if you had a blackout, but also, more importantly, you can activate them at night between the hours of 10 and 7 a.m. if you have rate to 190 of a PSCG, so you get electricity at 10 cents per kilowatt, and release it back between the hours of 4 and 7, Monday through Friday, and save yourself a ton of money and amortize those costs.
Energy arbitrage.
Yes, and but those things cost about $10,000-12,000 a pop, so you'd need to spend probably $35,000 to do this. So it'd take a while. However, with a subsidy, like they're doing this in Vermont, it would cut the cost in half, and it would be really worth it, actually. And you would within 5 years you get a payback.
Similar accidents with power walls, with them just catching on fire and burning people's houses down, or is that not a problem?
It is an issue. In fact, last week, Tesla, which manufactures power walls, has just recalled 10,000 of them. And look, Tesla has manufactured about 1 million of them throughout the world. About 500,000 are installed in the U.S. And they did a recall for a series that was done between, I think, 22 and 23 by a subcontractor, which I suspect is the Koreans, LG, who are manufacturing this for on behalf of Tesla. So there are risks. However, what's really interesting in this particular event is as soon as they found out that there were fires, 4 or 5 of them with that particular model, they immediately turned off all the ones that were installed and at various houses overnight, shut them down, and are in the process of replacing them as we speak. So, but there are risks.
Christian, one of the things that I thought was helpful, you did a similarly excellent presentation at your planning commission last week. I think you and others spoke about the fact that, put it in the context of our grid changing and our energy generation changing, and that, if you project forward 50 or 60 years, there's going to be need to store more energy because of greater reliance on renewables. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, or if...
So I think without getting into a partisan view on climate action and so on, I think in the state of New York and throughout the United States and elsewhere, there is interest in developing these BESS. Obviously, it allows you to deal with peak demand. The thought is it would help in terms of peaker plant. Getting into this view or not is not, how I would think about it, but more that it's being put in place. If people want to, if promoters want to put BESS, there are plenty of places to put them, even in Suffolk County where you're away from high density of people.
And critical infrastructure.
And critical infrastructure. I mean, plenty of places in Suffolk County I could put them in.
They need to be near the place the energy is being used. I mean, you put it
no, but it's helpful to put it next to a substation. In fact, the Hampton Bays concept was right next to a large substation. That was the idea, and that's why the electrical company was favoring that project. But it's continuing at rapid pace in the last 5 years in the United States to build this. As we know, we have growing demand for electricity in the country, particularly with these I call them digital farms, but this, the data storage, it's just enormous need, and BESS is part of the arsenal of solutions for that. It's just a question of where do you put them, and having them in a community like Southampton that is densely populated is probably not anything that anyone would want, and your issue is how to prevent this from happening in your community, and that's what we're solving for.
Yeah.
I know you're not a lawyer, but the town of Southampton made a very best effort to regulate and control where marijuana dispensaries would be located. And yet an applicant came in and located it in a place they weren't supposed to locate it, and appears, I think, won the first leg of that challenge. Now, somebody smoking marijuana where they shouldn't be is not as big a problem as one of these best things melting down and causing basically Armageddon out here. So do you think it's possible that the legislation we create can be ironclad enough to make sure that it survives challenges? I know you're not a legal expert, but this seems to be incredibly important, that we make sure that there's no way to get around the regulations we promulgate.
It's a little the same issue. It reminds me of what's going on with the FCC Act of 2018 with deployments of nodes versus macro towers, and asking ourselves the question, there are some things you can't really control in the case of nodes, and you're right away, it's kind of out of your control. There's great extent. The 2019 Act we were talking about for the solution at the state level does have some issues where you cannot, as a community, and I think Eileen and I had spent some time on this, you cannot basically put forever a moratorium or just forbid it altogether. Eileen, do you want to talk about this for a second? I mean, we did.
Yeah, you can't have moratoriums that don't
Right.
have an end.
Never ending.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but so I think the point is, you're fighting your regulator in a community because they want this stuff to happen. So you can do your best to, but Is anything ironclad? Probably not.
Christian, speaking about, just real quickly, speaking about specific risks for the village, it feels to me like some possible aspects for us would be that, first of all, first responders could be at risk, as they have been in other situations.
That's the big issue for first responders, yeah.
So that's a serious consideration. And also that even if they're not at risk, there could be a need for, I know these systems, as you described, typically have probably in some cases specialized fire suppression systems, but they fail sometimes. Those have chemicals. Should we be considering the possibility that our fire department is going to need specialty equipment to handle some of these situations that we don't already have?
Equipment and training would be intense if there was a BES in this community. So I think the idea is to have as little a probability of that happening without saying it, because you can't.
Right. But, the reason why I brought this up was several residents had mentioned to me this issue. And then with the town, limiting the possibilities for BES in the town jurisdiction, and the village having nothing on the books right now could be a target. Well, okay, let's put it right there because this is the center of the whole place, and that would be great. And I think, at least I would like to protect the village and have some legislation in place so we can try and defend against that.
In theory, right now, could a resident say, I want to put a 1 megawatt storage battery in my home and make an application to do that? Is there anything in our code that prohibits that?
What was the question, sorry?
Could they, the town code limits residential now to 80,000 kilowatts. Could someone say, because they want to sustain themselves for a week during a blackout, that they want to put in a 1 megawatt storage facility in their home somewhere here in Southampton, a 4-acre lot in Southampton?
In the town?
In the village.
In the village.
Right now.
Because we don't have anything on the books regulating this, so
That's right.
That would be the concern.
You think the answer is yes right now?
Let the council take that one up.
Yeah, I don't know, it's a complicated area, but generally speaking, it has to be addressed in the code, so.
And the fire marshal has a right to weigh in on proposed
would.
plans,
Oh, definitely,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
They're gonna look at the broader zoning category, I think, and determine if it's permitted or not.
But I think the
Though
point
it's
is
not-
that
Talking about when it's not mentioned in the code.
there's nothing in the
Right.
code, so the
Yep.
question is, can you do something if it's not mentioned in the code? And that's the risk. And Bill, I agree with you. Number of residents who knew this was coming up tonight have great interest in this and agree that they don't want to see it in their community.
Could we break this into two things and maybe attack the idea of adopting the town code for residential districts right now or as soon as possible to limit it to the 80 kilowatts? Feels to me like that's a pretty practical first step with further understanding. I don't know.
It seems to me that the answer's in the setbacks. Right?
I mean,
that's the
but
answer.
there's a lot of narrative that goes along with it
You're
and
talking
so
about a
on.
Powerball?
Yeah, there weren't setback restrictions though for just
No, there
the
isn't.
residential.
Not the residential, right, because
Yeah.
It's in the house.
it's in the house,
Yep.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I probably would discuss this with the planner and the building inspector and ask them what they think would be a possibility and then see about, again, limiting it. And obviously, it's always easy to copy in other municipalities, in this
Yeah.
case, a neighboring or surrounding municipality and adopting their code. But as you showed in the presentation, you think we have to go a little further, especially for the light
Correct.
industrial area.
Correct. I mean, I already know the feedback of your billing inspector with whom we had a meeting this morning. In his view, he has not seen any applications. He really doubts that there is anyone who's going to show up
Yeah, but
in the village, but you don't know.
doesn't mean
But
that someone may
I
not come
understand.
knocking tomorrow.
But I'm just sharing what his current views are as of today
Yes.
on the topic, and he does think it's nice to have.
That's what I'm concerned.
It's really a question for you to manage your resources to do this work. It can be done. We know how to do it.
Yeah.
That's your call.
All right, well, let's regroup with the building inspector and the planner. Alex, you're in the room, so have you heard anything about this going on in other communities?
Not that I've heard.
Okay. So, again, I think we have to spend a little more time on it, but I want to thank Christian Pico for his diligence and thoroughness in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation,
Yeah.
thank you.
And we will look to, possible legislation, shortly here at the end of the year, beginning of the new year. Okay, Next, on discussion items, we were going to have a discussion on revising the existing policy on setting the agendas for meetings of the Board of Trustees. Mr. Simeone, do you want to start on this?
Yes, of course. That's something that I'm trying to propose for your review and adoption is a proposed resolution, not to be voted on tonight, but just for you to consider, establishing formal procedures for the preparation, submission, and distribution of the Board of Trustees meeting agendas. These guidelines are based directly on recommendations issued by the New York Conference of Mayors, NICOM, and reflect statewide best practices for transparent, efficient, and orderly municipal governance. Establishing clear agendas, procedures will ensure that all trustees have a fair and timely opportunity to place items on the agenda, improve consistency in how agendas, materials are prepared and distributed, increase transparency for both the board and the public, provide a reliable process for addressing late arriving and or time-sensitive materials. The proposed resolution formalizes 5 key standards. 1, clerk manage agenda preparation under direction of the mayor. Access for trustees to place items on the agenda. Allowance for additions during meetings by a majority vote. Confirmed distribution timelines and authority to issue supplementary agendas when needed. These procedures will enhance board efficiency and align village operations with NICOM's recommended governance framework. I respectfully request board consideration and adoption at our next meeting. I can also read the resolution if you care to.
No, I
listen
think
to it.
that's all right, since we're not going to be looking at
All
that
right.
this evening.
That's fine.
But let's go around to the other members of the board and hear their comments. Len?
The current, and I understand that NICOM issues regulations and
Well, it's not a regulation.
guidelines, rather, guidelines. And I can understand, why you would look to them, but, a lot of cities and other localities are in NICOM, and I think we had a problem 2.5 years ago with the way resolutions were brought to the board, preceded my time as a trustee, and I thought it was handled well. With the concurrence of a second trustee, a resolution can be brought to the agenda. And we have, I think, an adequate time cushion before the board meeting. So I'm not really concerned about this as an issue, and I don't see that it's a problem that needs to be solved.
I think it's a good idea to formalize it, and I thank you for bringing this up. I would like to correct this point. It has been mentioned that we have a policy requiring 2 trustees to add an item to the agenda. That is not correct. The existing policy only requires a second trustee support if a trustee is asking the village attorney to do additional work on an item, not simply to place something on the agenda. Every trustee has a right to add an agenda item for discussion. It's a fundamental part of democratic governance that all elected officials can bring topics forward. We must not create barriers to prevent open discussion or limit any trustee ability to represent their constituents. I hope there is no intention to create a policy that would prevent an individual trustee from adding an item to agenda because he doesn't have a second to do it. That is, we should be able to express that. And your present policy only says that you need 2 trustees in order to go to the attorney to create a resolution. And that was at a time when the village attorney was not an employee of the village, but was an outside counsel and had to be paid in order to
No, I
prepare a
understand.
resolution.
I understand. It just,
So I'm just formalizing it. I mean, NICOM has a nice,
no, I understand. I saw it, I read it, and
Yeah.
I understand it.
and it just
Yeah.
clarifies and makes sure there's no, let's say, confusion as to how one should proceed if one wants to put an item on the agenda, or do it at the last moment so that no one can say, this is not the procedure, this is not how it's been done. So let's formalize it, and it's just fair to the trustees in order to have a functioning board and an agenda that reflects what the trustees would like to see on it.
Is that correct? Because, I mean, the two policies I was provided when I asked for them are, he's correct, that they say, you know, they talk about the chain of command and they talk about directing the village attorney to whatever, but that doesn't mean there's not another one out there. When I got here in 2023, this board was operating under that premise. And so every time somebody submitted something, Kathy Sweeney would send an email, do I have a concurrence to add this to the agenda?
Correct.
And so I'm just saying we operated as if that were the policy. So just because someone hasn't given me a resolution, I'm not comfortable saying that policy never existed, so.
Well, and I would just add that I think it's, you know, for legal sufficiency, it's good that the village attorney reviews resolutions before they're put onto the agenda. Because if it has an issue to it, you know, you're not able to really change it on the fly. It's better to have it properly drafted originally and then presented to the entire board.
And it's also good that we don't spend a lot of time working on stuff that's not getting voted on, so.
Well, that was the issue
I think
originally.
that is what it was.
And I agree with you. When she asked for a concurrence, I'm under the impression that she requires two people to
Right.
agree to it, to be on the agenda, not that it has to go to you.
Right. I'm not, I don't know. I never researched it before. I did follow up with Kathy.
yeah, that's-
So when she
that's
gets
just the
back
way
from
we've been
vacation,
operating.
ask her to
I
look
don't
at
know.
whether there is.
Robert,
another
Roy,
policy.
did you want to add something?
I understand it why you're saying that each trustee should be able to make their voice heard, and simply to put the item on the agenda, the mayor would say, the next resolution is X, Y, Z, do I have a second? And if there is not a second, at that point, that item would not be discussed,
Correct.
correct? So what you're saying is you would like to at least have that person have the opportunity to make their statement heard, even if the board does not want to debate it or discuss it further.
Or the board may want to vote against it. You don't get
Well,
a
they would then have to
majority.
second it and have discussion and vote
Right,
against it. But if
right.
the board didn't even second the resolution, there would be no discussion. That's the end of
That
it.
is also true.
We've had occasions where there hasn't been a second.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, yeah.
That is also true, but at least it's brought up and then we
Right.
see where everybody else stands.
The point that the mayor made, that you want the resolutions. I'm not a lawyer, so if there's a resolution and I read it and I don't understand that there's a legal problem with it, we might second this resolution, also we begin discussing it, and then the village attorney would say, well, wait, you guys can't do that, that's illegal.
I'm not against that concept. I mean, of course, you can go to the village attorney and have him review it in case. I mean, that's not something that I would be against or say it's probably a good idea, actually, to make sure that it's proper.
But for transparency, Ed, I also think it's better to get these things in further advance, again, so it can be reviewed by the attorney, not at the last minute. Obviously, if you were to submit something late in the afternoon, the night before a meeting, the attorney would have to, drop everything, review it, and then, again, the clerk would have to put it onto the agenda in a timely fashion so that we meet the deadline of 24 hours notice. I mean, when I was speaking to Roy the other day, he thought, well, maybe we could do this, but have at least 48 hours prior, so that, again, not only board members get to look at these things, the village attorney gets to look at these things, but also if we put a draft out to the public, we want to give them as much time to be able to look at these things as well. I mean, you were very adamant that you did, again, I think I mentioned this the last meeting, that you did not like things being put on at the last minute that then were going to be voted on the next day because it didn't have enough time for the public or board members or anybody for that matter to be able to really see what was coming up on the agenda, but it sounds like now you've changed your mind
No,
and you think it's
absolutely
fine
not. No,
to
no,
do
no,
it
no, no. I
the
have
night
not-
before.
I have not changed my mind, but the agenda is a work in progress.
But
There
that's,
is-
that's correct.
Right, so what we get 72 hours in advance is not necessarily what's going to be presented
That's
one
correct.
day
That's
before.
correct.
So
But it gives more transparency,
Yeah,
which I thought
absolutely.
you were in favor of. So
absolutely.
it's nice to be able to get this out as, I mean, we try to get things out earlier.
I agree.
And we know it's not a final draft, but it's nice to get things out as early as possible
Yes.
so that everybody has the time to look at it. I think actually Rob was advocating for more time as well, for people to digest what was going to be placed on the agenda. So I would just say that, you know, again, I think it's been working well. I mean, we can make every effort to try and get things out earlier, which I think we have been trying to do. But there are occasions, Ed, for example, when Jen Messiano, the grant writer for the village, sends me something literally the evening before a meeting and says, if you don't get this in for tomorrow's meeting, you don't have an opportunity to get the grant. And so, of course, how many times has that happened?
Too many.
Yeah, so I can assure you that has happened many times, and I have to go right to the village attorney. I say, we've got to review this, we have to take action because we could risk losing hundreds of thousands of dollars if we don't get this paper in and vote on it tomorrow. And so the village attorney drops everything and we work on it and we get it done. That, as you heard, that's happened multiple times. It's not done on purpose to try and hide that there's a grant. It's that, unfortunately, the grant manager for the village has not been able to present it for whatever reason until the last minute. But anyway, I just wanted to explain that.
I would say, I think the concept of having these codified and written down somewhere so everyone knows what they are and knows what the ground rules are is a good idea. Whether we use NICOM's model or make our own, it sounds like we've got one that works pretty well some of the time, maybe much of the time. You know, my personal experience is I've asked to have things put on the agenda that I thought were reasonable, I thought had been discussed, and in the past they've not shown up. But that may be because I don't understand the ropes well enough, or there might have been a miscommunication. So to me, codifying, understanding exactly how something can get on an agenda, I think makes sense. Roy, I hear your concern about, is it just a waste of time to put something on if a person's not going to second it and we're not going to discuss it? My belief is that wouldn't happen too many times, meaning that once it happened once or twice, there might be a learning curve because it's not productive and could be politically or personally embarrassing.
I think it's fine. I think the mayor's got a good point, though, that you don't want one person putting something on the agenda at the last minute all by themselves. I think there should be a time frame, say 48 hours or some period of time, that once you're within that limit, you need to get, I would say, a majority to get it on the agenda.
Look, I think one of the guidelines that I would recommend be in a written one-page, half-page guideline sheet would be to say that unless something has an urgent deadline, previously unknown deadline, or is a matter of sort of public safety or other compelling urgency, that it goes to the next meeting. It doesn't go on, in less than 24 or 48 hours.
With concurrence?
In the case of emergency, I would
No, not an emergency, not in the case of an emergency.
with concurrence. I'm willing to try it without concurrence, except maybe, I even with now a very capable staff attorney, and we're not paying exorbitant hourly fees to an outside law firm, I think the idea of,
Not exorbitant being the operative words.
they're generous, but they're not exorbitant. But the idea of throwing a lot of things at an attorney, at any employee, and saying you got to draft this for me or tune this up from a concept to something actionable, I think that should require some concurrence, actually.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of that.
Basically, I think it's working well. As I said, I don't think it's a problem that we have to solve. I think we can codify the two concurrence things in non-emergencies.
Yeah.
And 48 hours, I think, is certainly wise for all of us to digest it and have time to read it and understand implications. I think that's fine. I mean, if we want to write up what we do now as the codification, I'm fine with that.
Although I would not agree on the concurrence, quite frankly, because I think just because there's no concurrence, a trustee should be able to put something on the agenda and have a chance for an open discussion with the public to see what his thoughts are and what he would want to do.
Just to be clear, I'm splitting the baby a little bit here, but my belief on concurrence is it's a matter of what we burden the village attorney to work on substantively. If it's an item for discussion, or someone has something through their own means basically drafted something that deserves review, to Len's point or Bill's point, but it's minimal review, I'm comfortable with that being a single trustee, but
Right.
maybe that's
And
for
also
further
one can write
discussion.
his own resolution, which I have been doing lately. It's not that complicated, quite frankly.
I don't know if Eileen would agree with that, but anyway, again, I think the village obviously should be looking at, and the public should be looking at, resolutions that are legally sufficient. If there is something in there that, is a problem, that should be dealt with prior to it going on the agenda, prior to the public looking at it, prior to the board receiving it. So, again, I think it's only good practice that resolutions are reviewed by the village attorney for legal sufficiency and just, again, cleaning up little things that may occur in a resolution written by somebody else. So anyway, that's my thought on the matter, and that's my opinion. I think we can work at trying to codify something, and we can discuss it again at the meeting in December.
All right.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right. So the next one is a discussion regarding transferring final authority on the expansion of the historic district and/or landmarking to the Board of Trustees. And Alex, I think you were going to come forward, and we may also call on Mark McIntyre, the chair of the Architectural Review Board and Historic Preservation Board.
Sure. So
Thank you, Alex.
I don't have a formal presentation, but
No.
I'm here to discuss the framework for historic preservation and the village's status.
We
as
appreciate that, because I think
CLG.
we
Yeah.
need to make sure that the public understands the steps that the village must go through in this process, because I think there's some confusion as to exactly how this all works.
So maybe you could start by giving us just a brief outline of what the ARB does during this process.
Sure. So the ARB, which is formerly the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation, they have a dual role. So they do what's called architectural review, which is that any exterior change to any building outside of a historic district comes before that board to make sure that it's harmonious, that it fits in with the existing building, that it fits in with the neighborhood. Their other role that they administer the village's historic districts, of which we have 4, and the village's local landmarks, of which I believe there are 9. So when changes are made to buildings in those districts or to landmarks, they review those for compatibility and to adherence to the standards that are set by the federal and the state government.
Yeah, I believe it's
for
a standard
historic-
set by the Department of the Interior.
That's right, yeah. The Department of the Interior sets standards for historic preservation. We also have our local guidelines and our local codes that implement those standards. So they take a look at that and they issue what's called a certificate of appropriateness, and they find that any type of addition or modification is acceptable for that. Part of their role is also to do periodic inventories of the village, looking to see what historic resources exist, and if they feel it's appropriate to designate historic districts and historic landmarks at the local level.
So there's a lot of talk about the fact that this village is a certified local government. Can you explain that so everybody has it clear?
And is that
Yeah.
granted by SHPO?
Yeah, so SHPO, that's the New York State, the State Office of Preservation Officer. So that's a national program, and every state and U.S. territory has certified local governments that are administered by state or territorial governments. So the village has been a certified local government since 1995. So we have 30 years of legacy of doing that, and we were one of the first, I believe, in Suffolk County to do that. And so it's a real achievement for the village. So that means that our historic preservation program is consistent with those state and federal guidelines. They have very specific requirements for what our local code has to contain. They set requirements for our historic commission, which is in our case is our ARB, that terms be staggered in a certain way, that they do training, that they are familiar with the standards, and it's very important that the boards adhere to those federal and state standards. So that's very important. We do periodic reporting to the state, and they do audit us every few years. I believe last year we did an audit with the state where they did a very comprehensive review of our program. They looked at the resumes of all of our board members. They looked at some of the decisions that were made. They read the minutes. They watched the video, and we got a very good report back, which was encouraging, that said that we were running a very robust historic preservation program. We've also adopted a version of their model code, making sure that our code is up to date. And so what that means is that any proposed changes to that code, we get approval from New York State through SHPO. That also means that they're a partner with us.
So we're, sorry, just to stop on that for
Yeah.
a second. We're required as a CLG to get pre-approval from them on any changes to our historic code. Is that a requirement under SHPO?
That's right. Yeah, that's a requirement of the Certified Local Government Program, that if we're modifying our code, that we're doing it in a way that aligns with their standards. Otherwise, we could risk jeopardizing the village's status as a CLG and risk decertification, which is something that we would want to avoid.
And would transferring the authority to make those decisions on the historic survey and or on landmarking, would that align with the CLG standards?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So it's a red flag. The state allows different structures for historic preservation. The system that we have now, where we have a board of historic review that administers districts and does the certificates of appropriateness, that's considered the gold standard model. That's the best practice, because you have a board that is independent, just like our other land use boards have independence, like the planning board and the zoning board. And inevitably means that they're nonpartisan. Their terms are staggered, so they work with successive administrations, and you do have that institutional knowledge.
Yeah, continuity.
Right, continuity, exactly. And then you have people that can become experts. Typically, we have architects and design professionals that serve on that board.
Right.
So that's really the gold standard model that they highly encourage. There are some municipalities where their commission serves more in an advisory role to elected officials. They discourage that model because it inevitably makes it a more partisan process as soon as you introduce elected officials. There's a concern that politics could be introduced to the process. Even when that happens, the elected officials, as the decision makers, have to follow those same federal and state standards. So they can't introduce other factors or things like that. One of the ones that's most important that is not permitted to be considered is individual or local preferences about like opting in or opting out or something like that, because that really, it would weaken the program to that it's meaningless. It would be like if someone could opt out of the zoning ordinance if they didn't want to follow it on their property. It would render the zoning ordinance meaningless. So that's one that they're very careful about, and if they find that in their when they do their audits and their periodic monitoring, that if there are elected officials that are not making decisions based on the history and the facts and all these standards, but on local opposition for one that's not grounded in one of those considerations, that can be grounds for decertification. I know there are other municipalities, not going to name them, but are struggling with performance, various issues because they don't have the professional staff and the guidance that we have in the long history that this village does of having a robust program. When I spoke to the state, and we're routinely in contact with them because they advise us and we have a good relationship with us, they've been very happy with the village's program, which has been encouraging.
All right, and actually, Mark, I don't know, did you want to come up here and talk a little bit about the process that we're in the midst of here, please? Or did you want to add anything on that, Alex?
Well, Mark comes up, I'll mention, so one of the things that's required of the certified local government is that you continuously, you survey to know what you have in the village.
Right.
Historic resources are an important asset to the village. And once they're lost, that's often irreversible, right? Like we have a postcard out in the hall about the Sayre House, which for 250 years was considered one of the oldest houses in the country of an English house, and it's lost. And once those resources are lost, it's almost impossible to recreate them. So that's an important factor. So it's important to know what you have. Mm-hmm. It's important to know what the challenges are when what's been lost. So the village has a long history of doing these surveys. They've been done ever since the districts were first created. And the state has been a really good partner with us in providing funding and support for those. So we did an initial reconnaissance level survey that was specifically a recommendation that came right out of the comprehensive plan that was done in 2022. I think it was 74% of residents who responded to the survey thought that that was a medium or a high priority to the village. There was a lot of concern about periodic loss of community character, about degradation to the village's historic resources, and a majority supported expanding that. So as part of that process, we did receive grants from the state, and we did an RFP, and we worked with consultants to help us understand what are the areas of the village that were most subject to change and that should be looked at to get a better understanding of the resources that we have. Do you want to add to that?
Don't go anywhere, I'm gonna need you.
Okay.
So that's where we,
Do I introduce who Mark is, just for the public?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is Mark McIntyre, the
Oh.
chairperson of the Architectural Review Board
Oh,
and Historic
thank you.
Preservation.
see, I always ask everybody to introduce themselves, and now I don't.
I know.
Where we are in the process, as Alex mentioned, we did a low-level survey, and then it came back and said, yes, it might be possible, because there's could you, would you, and should you. And if we go back to the comprehensive plan, that was the should you. There was a recommendation from that plan that we look at potentially expanding the historic districts. So from that, we did a low-level survey. When it came back and said that we potentially could, based on initial research, that's when we went out and got the grant, which has now triggered a much more comprehensive review. At the time we stepped into it, there were 4 areas of the village that were actually identified as possible areas to explore based on our cost at that time and the reality of time. We narrowed it down to 2, the 4 recommended as a starting point, and then where we are right now is those areas have the initial survey work is being done, has been done, and we have a work document right now that is that the members of the Architecture Review Board have, that they're looking at, and right now I'm asking them to come forward with any questions, any thoughts, anything they want clarified, because right now it's a draft. And when that report is done, then that draft will be finalized by the company that's doing the work for us. And then it will be presented to you all and to the state, because then it goes to SHPO. SHPO has to look at it. They have to agree with our methodology. They have to agree with the process and our findings in order for it to go forward. Then it comes forward. At that point, then the way right now is a little unclear based on where you guys are. Because through the election process it became, and the sessions you guys did, I was out of town, the sessions that was done with the paper, it was determined that you guys would prefer that the decision for expanding the actual decision be moved to the trustees, but right now it's not in our code. So where I understand, and we're now in the process of looking at what the update to the code would be to be able to transfer that from the ARB to the trustee. Where we are right now is, and the process is slowing down a little bit, because the way forward would be, once you understand where that happens, then you issue a notice of, I don't remember the exact legal term, but it's a notice of intended designation or some such. Any house on any street that might be considered gets sent a registered letter by the village. Then it has to be scheduled for public hearing, and then from the public hearing, a decision has to be made. Now, what I'm understanding is what you guys will be looking for at that point is a recommendation from the Architecture Review Board. Then the decision would then be transferred to you. Now, whether we can do that or not depends on the code that you guys decide upon, and its approval by SHPO, and then it has to come back and be approved, and then it has to be, a resolution has to be created, then it has to be voted on, and then it has to be implemented. So that process there is not a fast process from what I'm seeing. So I think that's where we are right now. Where I am right now is the board members have the initial work draft of the work that's been done, because I'm the only, we've had so much turnover in the Architecture Review Board, I'm the only person on the board now that was there in the beginning of this process. Most have come on in the last year to year and a half. So this is new, so I'm giving them plenty of time to go through everything, to totally understand it, to be able to ask questions of the preservation company that we're working with that's doing the work. And then once their questions are answered and everyone's comfortable, at that point, then we take any questions or changes back to preservation. They will come back with the final draft. That draft will then be presented. And like I think I said in the paper last week, I'm hoping that can be, realistically December, but realistically it's probably going to be mid to end of January, just before all that work can get done for where we are in the holiday schedule. But that's where I think
And then
we are
at that
right now.
time, you would make it available to everybody.
Well, at that point, I make it available to you guys, and then I think the process is it becomes foilable at that point, or available to the public at that point, because right now it's an internal working document that's not complete. That's where I think we are.
Okay. And I don't know, Eileen, did you have anything you wanted to add to this at all?
Well, I mean, I don't know how we got here. I guess that's my question. If the program is receiving high marks and we have a very successful program, I'm not sure what motivated this switch from taking it from the independent board, the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation, and transferring it to what is essentially a political board, the Board of Trustees.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think there was a discussion, and it seems like a majority of the board would like to move into the
But for
Board
what
of
purpose?
Trustees. Rob, do you want to?
Look, this, honestly, it predates me. I attended
Yeah.
some board meetings here when this topic came up, and then in that process, I heard at least 3 members of the board at the time say that they would, they understood why a lot of people in the community seemed to want to have it, and they would feel more comfortable. I think Roy spoke out pretty eloquently about it. And so it seemed, as I came onto the board, that there was already at least 3 other members who wanted that based on a lot of public support. I have done a lot of research on this now, and I'm not pushing anything here personally, just so people know and just for clarity. I followed that lead. I think the concern is it's a large decision. It seems irreversible to people. There's a perception, whether it's true or not, but there's a strong perception that it has impact on value of properties. And, we can all put people into categories. There are some people who try to game the system and want to, unfortunately, tear down or significantly modify a house and don't understand its historic importance. And there are awful lot of people with goodwill who wouldn't behave that way, but are a little bit afraid of what some of the burdens might be and what some of the limitations might be of their property rights. So I think it's a valid discussion. The research I've done says that the 3 other certified local governments on the East End, and there's some dispute and debate about whether Southampton Town is. We're still marking.
No, I think we actually got a date. Southampton Town applied in 2022 to become a certified local government, and I think we actually discovered the date was December 23.
Yeah, they're very recently certified.
Because they updated the code actually using ours
It's not in the
as a
public
model
record.
when they looked at the town
Well,
to figure out
the issue there
local
just is
government.
that there's no history with those programs like we have.
No
a
history.
30-year history of a successful program.
Well, wait. There are for the other 2, Sag Harbor and East
You
Hampton.
researched that and talked to SHPO?
I'm sorry?
Did you research that and talk to SHPO?
About their ratings?
Yes.
No, I don't. I didn't even know we had a rating. This is the first time hearing we had a rating, so no. What I have determined is that they've had historic districts for a long time, and their codes for a very long time have had this decision about expansion or creation of a historic district based on a vote from the village board, or town board, now in the case of the town, with a recommendation. I've tried to find cases that have happened, unfortunately. The only 2 that I'm aware of, and I haven't even proven them yet, but I believe that there have been 2 houses landmarked in East Hampton where the owners wanted to landmark the houses. So that makes a difference. It makes the whole process a lot easier for everyone involved. It becomes a ratification process and not anything controversial. So it's not very instructive as to whether they've worked well when it comes to something that has more potential controversy or differences of opinion to it. So I've not been able to see how that's been navigated. But I personally would imagine, because having been a member of the ARB and being a fan of the board and the meetings that Mark runs, I have a lot of faith that our ARB, and now that I'm hearing we have great ratings from SHPO, would put together a very thoughtful recommendation and a lot of information for us to base a decision on. I'm not pushing this one way or the other. It seemed like it was a topic of specific interest back in winter and spring of last year. It was a topic during the last election, and there seemed to be some concurrence. I know I've spoken with each of the members of the board on this, that maybe it's only a penny on the scale, that they seem to be either wanting themselves or responding to the public the idea that maybe a decision of this magnitude deserved to be in the hands of elected officials, not for political reasons, but because of just accountability reasons.
And would it, do you envision the new law that we write, would it keep the system in place for the ARB, or for the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation, and then based on that, instead of, like currently right now, they say yay or nay, for example, to a landmarking or a historic district, would they say yay or nay in the form of we recommend it or we don't recommend it?
Yeah,
to you?
they
and then
would.
would you do your own public hearing and
Yes.
do the
Well,
whole process again?
That's my question. Play this,
Yeah.
play this down for a minute. Okay, so let's take the historic districts out for a minute because that's a big, complicated problem. Let's just take a landmark.
Okay.
So a house a house comes up, recommended for landmark. The architecture review board hires we take Zach, our historic consultant. He goes out and does his research. He comes back with the research. The board members all take a look at it. They look at the house. They drive around. They understand the impact, and they decide yes, that we recommend that this house be landmarked.
Mhm.
So then we're going to recommend it to you guys. Then the burden to the trustee is to go look at the house, to retake the exact same research process because you would have to be updated. You can't make that decision logically unless you've been updated by Zach. You've seen the house, you've had the same lawyer presentations who are going to come tell you why we're wrong, and then Zach's going to tell you why you're right, and you would have to go through the exact same process twice in order to make
would
that
we, though?
decision.
They've
Based on the
got-
same criteria.
that-
Based on the same criteria.
Would we though? Because you will have created a file in that process that we should be able to rely on, as people should rely on any files and determinations you make. So just like it was a determination, the recommendation should have the same reliability. We would probably want to go and drive and check it, but wouldn't we have more freedom in deciding whether we felt in any case whether we needed to go back to square one, as Mark's describing? Is
Well,
it certain that we would need to do
I would imagine
that?
at the very least, how could you say no if they've said yes, unless you did something
I agree.
different,
Well,
or
there,
you looked at it?
I
If you're
fully-
relying on what they say and their expertise, right?
none of us.
Even if you want to say no, which would be fine if that's how you felt, the question is,
Right.
from an applicant standpoint, is the applicant putting together all the presentation twice?
Understand.
Yeah, and I think what you're hearing is that the reason why this is considered a weaker approach is it creates a longer, more duplicative process and also sets up some tension between this board and the architectural review board where it currently
But
exist.
that tension doesn't exist in the other municipalities, because I've been in those other municipalities and it works pretty well. They have exactly the same system. So
Do they repeat, or did they just rely on?
I honestly, I don't know. It's only, as I told you, I've only found 2 examples, and it was.
Actually, it's a good question.
And I can-
Yeah.
To be
I'm not
honest
sure
with
they
you,
have the model
yeah.
code either, which is
Right.
what we have.
Yeah.
So
And I
I'm
can
not
tell
sure they
you
have all the steps we have.
What SHPO has told us from a statewide perspective is they deal with municipalities where that does become an issue, where a recommendation is provided to a group of elected officials. If they don't agree with that recommendation, then that creates tension where one board is saying yes and the other board is saying no. It's something to think
So,
about.
yeah, so, excuse me.
But I do want to be clear on one thing. When the question was asked of me
Yeah.
and the architecture review board, how would we feel if the trustees feel that that's where you feel this decision we said yes. We
Yes,
said
you
that's
did,
fine.
yes.
The question becomes, there was other questions that came in about, people who, doing it as a vote. I think that you can't do according to state law. But as far as transferring the decision, if that's the way you feel, we're on record saying okay.
Right.
But the question becomes now, what is that code, and how does the state feel about that code, and what's their opinion
Right.
on that before
So-
you can make that decision? And that's
So
I
we
think,
were
where
talking
are.
about just the expansion of the historic district. I don't know if I want to then take on individual landmarking
Yeah.
approval,
then the
because
question
that
becomes-
seems
well, then the
not to
question
be
becomes,
something
can you-
that
can
we
you
would
parse this out?
necessarily be
Yeah.
suited to do, because
Right.
if I understand it correctly, there are certain criteria that members of the board have to meet in order to make that judgment.
Yeah. It's
And
a
I don't
5-point
know
ballot
if there are many of
process.
us on this board that have that experience or knowledge to make that call. Now,
well,
just the expansion of a historic district seems, possibly reasonable, but I think changing it to us determining an individual landmark of a specific structure, I think that probably is better to remain at the ARB level.
Did you say we can't parse it out? Like, why couldn't we?
I don't know the answer to that. The state would come back
It
to
could
say
be
but
problematic, I
It
think.
seems to me.
Why would it be problematic? I
It
just
seems to me
wanna
that
hear.
the approval of a historic district or a landmarking is sort of the same decision. One's on an individual versus one is on a district.
But one's just a district.
But the state would have to come back and weigh in on that.
Yeah.
I can't predict what the state would say.
I would say that the district is probably more complicated and labor intensive because if you're talking about multiple properties and the way that they relate to one another, and districts include both contributing and non-contributing structures, so it's a much
Except,
more
but we
in-depth-
wouldn't be weighing in on specific individual structures.
You'd have, The board that makes that determination would have to do that, because the distinction between contributing and non-contributing structure, that's part of the designation.
But
So
it's,
Of the district.
of the
I
district,
understand,
yeah.
but I don't know, to me, there's a difference there. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm, there may be, but from looking at where we are with the homeowners, that are involved, that would be involved in this process, I think the best way forward is to go put together what we feel is the decision you'd like to see, put it at the state and let the state give you a decision, and let SHPO come back and give you their feedback on how you'd like to see that operate. And let SHPO tell you if they're comfortable separating those out or not. They may be and they may not be, but
Yeah, okay,
that
seems
is the
fair.
process that needs to move faster.
What do you think, Eileen? Is that fair?
I'm happy to do whatever you want. I just want some clear guidance on what you want us to do.
And we're trying to get there.
Rob, maybe we can talk to those other municipalities and see how they're set up.
The other person who'd be really helpful here, frankly, because she works in all of them, is Alice.
Is it- for
Because
sure,
Alice,
for sure.
our counsel, Alice
So
Cooley,
she's
because she
counsel for Sag Harbor too, isn't she?
yeah, well, and she works as an attorney also in the other districts, so she knows and is very comfortable.
We should have invited Alice
Yeah.
tonight. Yeah.
And something to keep in
Go
mind
ask
when,
Alice.
when you compare it to other districts, the town of Southampton has no local historic districts. The village of the village of Sag Harbor, being so much more compact than our village, is almost entirely covered by historic district.
Right.
So their opportunity to do new designations and surveying is not like ours.
Yeah. And what does the town do? I'm sorry, I didn't
The,
quite
the, well, the
understand.
town just became a certified local government. They have no local districts.
And so have they just been landmarking individual
They,
structures?
they only have individual landmarks at this point, although that likely they would, now as a CLG, they will probably do periodic surveys of different hamlets
Right,
and
because
things
weren't they
like that.
talking about like Bridgehampton?
Yeah, they said there's something in Bridgehampton.
Yeah.
Bridgehampton is not a CLG, but I thought it designated
It has a-
historic sensitivity or something like that.
Historically sensitive area, there's a name for it, a specific name. It's mostly in the commercial district that they rent afoul of. Yeah.
All right, so.
I just had one
Sorry,
question.
Roy, yeah, of course.
Alex, you mentioned in your discussion that one of the things that's frowned upon is basing your decisions on public opinion. So if it were to remain, the situation were to remain the way it is now, with the ARB having the decision, would you have public hearings? Would you listen to the
Yeah,
people?
absolutely.
And how
I
do you
think we
listen
have
to
to.
the people
That-
and not
that-
be influenced by public opinion?
I think what I was referring to is what's frowned on by the state is if you put it into a voting referendum. Like if you ask people in a street to vote on whether or not that street wants to be, that's what the state says that would frown upon that. The next step, when the notice goes out, becomes a series of public hearings. It has to.
It has to.
Yeah.
It
You
has
would
to.
listen to their input, right,
Yeah,
Alex, on
absolutely.
like,
Yeah, we are obligated. by
these are
code
the
to listen to
standards,
their
and that
things, but-
we're saying, or our expert is saying this house is contributing factor, whatever, because of
Yeah.
this, and then you would listen to the public who says, no, they missed something there.
Yeah.
Here's what's actually the truth on that, and then
Exactly.
that's
So
something
public-
you would take into account.
Right, so
But I
public.
just don't want for our residents to be in a position where some board of the SHPO, wherever, says, oh, no, everything in Southampton Village is wonderful, we want to save it, and the people are like, in the vast majority saying, no, we don't think it is.
Right.
Right.
No, public input is very important.
Right.
So there's a public hearing process that would go into
Yeah, there
any
has
of
to be
this.
public
What's not permitted is like somebody either like opting in or opting out or doing like a referendum. It's similar to the zoning board. So the zoning board has public hearings. They're required to take in that public input about the character of the neighborhood. But the type of input that they don't consider is someone says, well, I don't like my neighbor, so I don't want them to have this variance. That's the type of public input that's not welcome. Or if an owner says, I don't think this should apply to me because it's inconvenient, that's not the type of input that they would consider. It always has to be about what the standards are. So where people have information about the history and the community and the character of this neighborhood, that's definitely input that the boards would take into consideration.
And it can't be like 7 out of 8 people don't want the guy to have a pool, so he doesn't get a pool.
Right.
It has to be
Yeah.
grounded in
And-
the factors.
Yeah, it's-
And we're required by code.
Right.
And by state code to take in public opinion, and that public opinion matters, and we're required to do public hearings, so there will be public hearings, and depending which it was, as I'm assuming those public hearings will be in front of
And,
this
and,
trustee board, not in front of the architecture review board, is where we will be.
and has the village done it before?
You can do both.
It's done what? Sorry.
Historic districts. We've done
No. So as far as I can tell, the power is with the.
No.
In the
Southampton Village has created historic
yeah.
Yes,
districts
we have-
over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Yes, the original historic districts were created in 1988.
Right.
They were then expanded and updated in 1993. There was another period, I think in the early 2000s, where it was talked about and reports were done, but it never went forward. So the last true expansion to our historic districts that they are was in 1993. The other thing that has happened until, I think it was 2 years ago, the time frame for historic reference was always based in November of 1928, because that's when the Sanborn maps were done.
Right.
But we actually updated that because the time period for historic reference in Southampton Village had never been changed. So looking at accepted standards, we now have a floating period of any house older than 70 years is what we review and what the reports are reviewing. So we understand, which is also good for the village, because we'll actually now have, paid for by the state, a much more accurate record and history of the structures that are in Southampton Village.
Which brings me, I just wanted, you raised a good point, Mark. One thing to know about landmarking, correct me if I'm wrong, but if someone outside the historic district right now, living in a house that's 70 years old or older,
It can be-
wishes to demolish their house, you sort of have, in a way, a right of first refusal to do this look at a house as to whether it deserves to be landmarked.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's
And there's a 5-point balancing test that goes with that.
6.
6
We have
points, sorry,
6.
6-point balancing test that goes with that, and you have to, and
5 is
it's a
EVA.
high barrier.
Yes.
Outside of
It used to
historic
be 5.
districts, it's a high barrier.
It got updated
They-
to 6 when
they got it
when the
added.
new model code.
Yeah.
But that's something that's important. So the board does a lot of functions, as you know. I don't think that there's any support for this board being here until 9:15, like we were last night doing certificates of appropriateness. That's part of what this board does. A part of that is the surveying in the district, which we're talking about. And the other
Yeah.
part is landmarking, which on the board's own motion, they do periodically, but also is tied to the demolition review that you mentioned.
Happens
So-
more frequently.
So
Yeah.
it is a fair amount of workload
And
that's
that's
involved
another
in that.
reason why I don't really think this board should get involved in individual landmarking,
Right.
because that is a whole different
You shouldn't.
thing.
It's a whole different thing. It's time intensive.
Yeah.
And it's actually knowledge and experience intensive, because the way they come in from the various parts of the village.
But
And it's also time limited the way that it is in our code, so the board only has that limited window to consider landmark designation in the case of a demolition. So that's something that would have to be rethought.
But I think my suggestion would be that we have further discussions of this at the December meeting, and maybe we invite Alice Cooley to come
Sure.
Can I
and
just
be
ask one
present as
further
well.
question?
Absolutely, of course.
Because it's been a hot topic. Trustee Simeone has been vocal in his request to have the draft report released to him. What is your view on the advisability of that, or the negative aspect of that?
I think it's not ready yet, because I think we owe it to the board members to be able to have their questions answered, to be able to put their own input in order to get a draft that the board believes represents their collective opinion. At that point, I think I've stated, it was in the paper last week too, when that is done, it gets released to all of you. And once it's released to all of you, it goes into public record, and then it becomes foilable. Right now, it's a work product. And we're on track to get that done. It's a slow process to get it done, because it's a lot to parse through to understand, especially when I have board members that I'm the only one that was there now that started the process.
Although we're referring to the draft report that was prepared by Preservation Studios, not the draft report that you're preparing. So we're just
It's
talking
one of the
about the initial,
No, it's the
It's
same.
the
No, it's one of the same.
same thing.
It's one of the same.
All right, but the way you're talking about it, you're going to be modifying it or changing it?
well,
or
They prepare a report based on the input and the criteria that the architecture review board has given them. They come back and this is their recommendation. This is their recommendation with their criteria they've used. This is recommendation. The board members read through it. If they have questions, those questions get answered. If there's anything that the board would disagree with or would want them to review or explain and maybe rewrite or re-edit, that gets done. And when it's kind of like we're in the middle of a dissertation right now. And when that process is done and we consider it a complete product, then it gets released. I think the board is doing interior work right now.
all right, but we could, as trustees, we still could see what the initial draft is. There's no reason why it should be withheld
I
from
will leave
us.
that to attorneys to discuss. It's my understanding that when you have a process that a board is working on until such time as the board considers it a complete process, it's a work product, that it doesn't get released out into the public.
Right, but I have to disagree with that. I've had the opportunity to review multiple advisory opinions from the New York State Committee of Open Government, and the guidance is very clear. Under FOIL, there's no such thing as a draft report. That is categorically exempt from disclosure. A document is a record. The moment it is created or received by a government agency, whether it's labeled a draft, preliminary, or otherwise. The only possible exception relevant is the intra-agency materials exemption under Public Officers Law 87-2G. But even under that subdivision, an agency may not withhold any portion of a document that consists of statistical or factual tabulation of data, instructions to staff that affect the public, final agency policy or determinations, or external information supplied by a non-agency party. The Committee on Open Government has repeatedly stated that factual portions of a report must be released, even if the opinions or recommendations within the same document may be redacted. There is no FOIL exception that allows a municipality to withhold an entire report simply by labeling it a draft. Given this report unquestionably contains factual findings, data, and information about village operations, the law requires that those portions be made public. For these reasons, I believe that it's important and legally appropriate that this board release the report consistent with FOIL and established New York guidance. And of course, if it comes to the trustees, it's not that we're going to just disclose it to the public. Right? As a trustee, I have the obligation of being able to oversee and see what is being presented. I mean, and we would maintain it within the trustees.
So,
With respect, I understand that that's your position, but that's not a question that I can answer. I would have to send that to council.
Yeah. Alice Cooley has looked at this, I think, Eileen, you mentioned to me.
right, so even though I've never seen whatever it is, the work product they have from Preservation Studios, they're not my client, they're Alice Cooley's client. I did, when we received FOIL request, I did refer it to her to make sure that whatever documents we had don't fit into the exceptions to the exception.
The ones that
So, the one that he's talking about.
Okay.
So it's a complicated area of the
Understand.
law, so really it's up to the person, the FOIL officer, and who they get legal advice about. There are tons of decisions going both ways.
I just want to say,
Yeah.
sort of for the public record, that the BARHP
Yeah.
Council has reviewed this, and she's made a determination that it doesn't meet those criteria.
Correct.
Is
And
that
I don't know what we're
correct?
talking about here.
Correct.
So if we're talking about a FOIL, that's the decision for the FOIL officer and with the advice of counsel. And if we're talking about this board compelling another board to do it, that's a different issue. And I don't think there's any grounds for one board to compel another independent board to do something like this. But
Well, I don't know if you call it independent. The ARB is part of the village.
they're an
It is- it
independent
is
board
paid-
with terms
well,
for that
the-
purpose.
For making determinations.
Right.
But it's not an independent board from the village. It's part of the village. It is paid by the village. It is part of the code of the village. And so therefore trustees do have oversight. It's not that they can operate.
But it's not
No,
this
they're
kind
wrong.
of oversight. This is their authority to make this decision right now until you change that.
I do not agree with that. That
Okay.
is their decision, their authority. It's the authority of the trustees to be able to have oversight and see product that was paid for and approved by the Board of Trustees. That is, we are the ones that approved the grant. We are the ones that approved the survey. And as such, we should be able to see it.
Did this board approve the survey?
Yes.
I'm sure we did, yes.
Yes.
And
It's a
why?
grant,
Resolution.
yeah.
No,
Oh, the grant.
only the grant.
Yeah, the money.
Only the
Yeah,
grant.
only that.
We didn't draft we did
They
not
appropriate
draft
money for
Yeah.
the boards to do it.
what
It
the
doesn't.
No, I
survey was to
understand.
be.
Okay.
It was done by the ARB. All we had to do was, again, accept the grant from the
Understand.
state.
We're a conduit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess my point was, it's confusing, you're saying it's subject to FOIL and it should be released. but if you give it to me, I'll keep it a secret, like,
Well, it's subject to FOIL, that is, the factual data may be subject to FOIL, not the determinations or the opinions, that is, it would be redacted. And for trustee, the whole report would be available.
But you're saying, counsel, that we are basically relying on this, excuse me, relying on this case, counsel, for the,
on the FOIL officer's decision, and we've discussed it, and I haven't looked at the document, but she has looked at the document, Alex has, Mark has, and. that
she's
was the
saying there's
opinion.
not factual information
was
or
the
other
opinion,
things that would
yes.
fall under those
Right.
exceptions.
Didn't fall into the exception to the exception, right. So,
And in as much as the boards, be it the zoning board, the planning board, or the ARBHP, they do act independently of the Board of Trustees. We are not supposed to control
Absolutely.
what they do.
I
So
agree
there
with
is a
that.
separation. Actually, I've now served on this village board 25 years ago and now for 7.5 years, and we always kept a very distinct line between what the village board did and what the various land use boards did. There was a big question about the nursing home that was built behind McDonald's over 25 years ago. And people wanted us to keep inserting ourselves over the ARB. And the board consistently said, no, we are not to insert ourselves in that. It is the ARB that rules on this, not the trustee board, the Board of Trustees, and we are not to influence them in their decision-making. So we have to keep it separate. That is the whole point of having land use boards as independent entities serving the village.
I am in complete agreement with that.
Good.
I do not intend to influence or tell the ARB what they need to do or not to do. I just want to see the report. That's
why
all.
can't you wait? You will see the report when it's prepared and ready.
Because if I go ask for it, I'm a trustee, I should be able to
But
see
to
it.
what end?
For me to see what's in the report.
Okay, we're
With
getting
all
nowhere
honesty,
here.
are there any other questions that I can answer? 'Cause
No, we appreciate
Well,
your time, and we
so-
appreciate you and your board's efforts with this.
And I will
task.
say to each and every one, the boards also feel the support that we get from you, Mr. Mayor, and the trustees. We do feel it, and we do appreciate it. I know there's a question coming up later tonight of appropriating funds for a problem that's facing the village, and the board appreciates the fact that you have our back.
Thank you.
So thank you for that.
And thank you, Alex, for your presentation as well.
Thank you
Are
both.
we're just gonna do this again next month? Like, I'm not
Yes.
writing anything right now?
No,
Okay.
I think we need to have Alice Cooley come, and I think we can have further discussions about this at that time. I want to understand the distinction more between expansion of districts versus individual landmarking and what that entails. Because again, if any time there's going to be something that comes up about a possible demolition, it has to come to our board. I think that's too cumbersome. It should not be done like
I
that.
think Mark's advice was good, that we should draft what we want to see and then see what the.
See what Chippo says.
Yeah, yeah.
Mayor Menger, could you, I know you have a good relationship with a lot of people, including Mayor Larson in East
Yeah.
Hampton. Could you maybe reach out to him and
Sure.
just see? I'll do the same with, I know 2 of the last 3 mayors in Sag Harbor
Yeah.
pretty well.
Yeah.
Just see what their experience has been
Absolutely.
I think
on these
the
issues.
issue is we're running into a time issue, really. I
What's the
mean,
problem?
Well, the ARB has this historic survey.
I don't think they
report.
need to rush it.
No, he said it's going to take maybe until the end of January or something. So I think that we'll be
But our
okay.
process, we have to notice a public hearing, send it to SHPO.
All
get
right.
a
Well,
response from
I think we
SHPO,
can
just
work
point to
cooperatively
me.
with Mark on the timing. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much
Yeah,
again.
I drafted something for tonight. Like, it's fine.
Okay. So now, again, this was a recommendation of Trustee Coburn that we should have some updates on various things going on in the village. The PRB, otherwise known as the Permeable Reactive Barrier, that will be installed at the north end of Lake Agawam to prevent effluents from seeping from the groundwater into Lake Agawam, is one of the projects, again, that we're looking at to clean up Lake Agawam. And Scott, I know you have had some conversations with them recently, so maybe
Yes.
you could give the specific update.
It seems like it might have taken a while, but it had to go through a series of regulatory processes. We actually just got word that they finished up and just got final approval from the DEC the other day. We're going to have a kickoff meeting or a coordinating meeting. We're trying to set one up for next week. We expect to have the well drillers out there by probably the 2nd, possibly the 3rd week in December, and then we'll start doing the drilling to establish the test holes and then do the water baseline testing of the water.
Maybe Santa can help with the drilling. Okay. And then the algae skimmer. So the update on that is that AECOM, who was the company that was, going to produce the algae skimmers, has actually decided to exit the algae business and focus on other businesses that they have in their portfolio. Apparently, the algae harvester business was a small component of what they were doing. They've decided to exit. The person we've been dealing with, Dan Levy, who actually holds the patent on this technology, has then left AECOM, founded his own company called Blue Cycle, and we are working with him to put another contract in place so that, again, we can continue to do that work. And we're going to verify that the grants are transferable. They were not specifically to AECOM. They were for building algae harvesters. So it's believed that we can still do that. Obviously, we will verify that before going forward anymore. But this just happened in the last, week or two?
About a week and a half ago. Yeah.
Week and a half ago. So again, we just have to have further conversations, not only with him and his ability, but also with the providers of the grants, which in this case is the EPA and the town of Southampton, water quality from the CPF fund. So that's all the update I have on that at this point. The sewer, Rob, I was going to ask you to maybe give a
But I have a
brief
question on the grants.
Yes.
At one time you had mentioned that we had to first front the money and then the grants would come, and there was an issue with that, about what the time on the grants would have been. Has that been resolved?
That hasn't been resolved. I mean, we honestly, we have to go back and again, make sure that they're still valid for this project. But that is the case in most government grants, is that you have to put the money out first and then you get reimbursed. Actually, Julie, the treasurer, is here, so maybe she could speak to that. That's correct, right?
A lot of money involved.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we haven't signed, the reason we hadn't signed the contract with AECOM is we didn't get final approval
Approval on
of
the
the
grants.
EPA grant.
So
And we didn't get final approval
I
of the
have
EPA
been-
grant. It was expected, and then the federal
And
government
I
shut
have
down.
been diligent not signing the
Oh,
contract.
absolutely, yes. Yeah.
The contract, it sounds like the contract will be signed when we've got
The grant money approved.
confirmation that the grant can be
Correct.
transferred essentially or
Correct.
used for this. And a final sign-off from the EPA, which we don't have, but we expect shortly. Is that correct, or
Well,
don't know?
It stopped during the.
Yeah, the shutdown.
We have
Shutdown, and we have
approval
not.
from the EPA for the work.
Yep.
What we need is final approval that the grant will be
Okay.
made available.
And then at that
Even though
point,
we've
we'd
been
sign.
awarded
And we
grant.
need a grant contract with them. Then, once we sign a contract with the EPA, and then we sign a contract with the
Yeah.
town CPF fund, then we would sign a contract with whoever's going to do the work.
Yeah.
Is it possible with the provider that they're willing to advance the work and not ask for the money up front and wait for the grant to come through?
Well,
Does
we've
that
tried
happen?
that, but that has not
No,
been
no.
successful to date. They don't want to, spend the money on their own, unsure whether it's going to, the program will continue. So I think we have to iron these things out. This was something that came out of left field, that all of a sudden AECOM decided to exit the business. But Dan Levy, who I've been dealing with the whole time, said that he is the one that possesses the patent. So it is his technology, and he has now transferred that to Blue Cycle, his new company, that would be able to do this. But obviously, more investigation has to be done.
With respect to the financing, Julie and I have been paying particular attention to this, along with our bond advisor and our bond counsel, so that we don't have the number of dollars in our reserves that could pay for this. So we're going to have to do some manipulation. So it's a cash flow analysis, sources and uses, and time. And we're going to try to figure out what the most efficient way and the cheapest way is for us to
Bridge.
lay out the money and get it back.
Yeah.
So we're definitely on that.
I think it's also worth mentioning on both of those issues, the PRB and the algae skimmer, that there was a lot of enthusiasm and probably very good intentions that pushed these projects off the pier to begin with, without necessarily all of the provisions and maps needed to navigate the whole trip. And I think that our village attorney and our village administrator have been doing a lot of work to re-provision the ship and do some backfilling on some of the details. So I think we should give them some appreciation for that.
That's correct. Thank you, Rob. You want to bring an update on the SOAR?
Sure. I need to refer to my notes a little bit. I just wanted to say, and Trustee Zananti is liaison, as am I, to the sewer task force. The task force does meet every 2 weeks, sometimes more often, especially recently. And the focus has been, of course, as you've known for a long time, finding the right site. And it feels as though we're getting closer. There are still multiple options. There are some interesting possibilities, but maybe the biggest focus right now happens to be on a site under which we're under an NDA at the request of the seller. So wanted to let people know that that's moving forward, and there's a lot of focus on that. We're in the process of updating budget numbers. Trustees and I were on a call today to hear some preliminary reports on that. It's not as bad as we feared, and it's also not final. So there's still another iteration of work to go. A lot of moving parts, but there's very serious work being done on it. And I think it's fair to characterize, Len, unless you disagree, that maybe sometime in January or possibly early February, we could expect to have a presentation from Paul Travis and others to give us a little more detail and start talking about some of what the implications are in terms of potential timing and potential construction impacts to the village and how that will be navigated. I don't know if, Len, if you wanted to add anything to that.
That's about it. There's a lot going on and not much we can really talk about, and that's a dilemma.
It's a dilemma. Yep.
How about the alternatives as to a central sewer system versus a package system, or any progress on that?
No one option has been decided. The big focus right now, honestly, is on the site, and I would say that in theory the site is available for different treatment technologies. The budgeting that we're doing right now is on traditional sewer treatment plant, but it's not been a final determination necessarily, but that is the focus.
And let me ask Scott, were we going to work with H2M to try and look at evaluating different possibilities?
Yes, we had actually already had one, I guess you call it a Teams meeting. And then I know Rob, we're going to set up another one and make sure that Rob, unfortunately, we had a communication gap, and I'll take responsibility for that. But we're going to have another one. Rob's going to be.
All right, hopefully we can do that soon, I guess.
Yeah, I had heard from them actually that they were going to send a proposal to do that work. So
can you follow up on the proposal?
I absolutely will.
Because I don't think I've seen anything yet. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, Robbie, you want to talk about bioswales at all, or
I'll let you start.
Well, we've got a lot of bioswales in this village, and they are again being put in to be helpful to the lake water, especially Lake Agawam, but also Old Town Pond. And now, we're looking at doing some bioswales even for Phillips Pond, which is the most easterly pond, and Wickapog Pond, also located in the eastern part of the village. Obviously, people have seen the ones downtown, so they are in the West Main Street parking lot, up at Bowdoin Square in front of the new post office. There's a small one on Linden Lane, right at the edge of Lake Agawam. And also a large one that everyone notices on Windmill Lane opposite the post office. So again, these have been funded by grants as well as the Lake Agawam Conservancy. And the good thing is we haven't actually had to expend a lot of money for these. Really, if any, I mean, again, in the grant cases, we forward the money, we front the money, and then we get reimbursed, mostly by the state and the town of Southampton. But, the ongoing projects that are happening at the south end of Lake Agawam, where, again, removal of all the Phragmites and the knotweed took place, and now they are putting in plants that they had reviewed with a DEC permit to make sure that, again, it was helping to filter the water as it runs off of Gin Lane down at the south end. And then I saw Joe McLaughlin here earlier. He now unfortunately has departed, but the town trustees are responsible for what are going to be bioswales in the center median, very similar to the West Main Street parking lot on Gin Lane in front of the Dune Church and the Bathing Corporation. That's still coming along. That will be planted, and again, there will be actually little bridges created to get from the north side of parking lot to the south side parking lot, and that's all part of a plan. Again, that was done by the town trustees, primarily on town trustee land. That's landfill that they get to control, but obviously it abuts the Village Road, Gin Lane. So anyway, that's where we are at this point. Rob or Roy?
I mean, look, for those who don't know, I wrote a letter in the paper last week. I've had some frustration on the most recent bioswale, and it's nothing against bioswales. With all modesty, I spent 6 years on behalf of the village looking into water treatment and water improvement technologies and systems and practices, and featuring bioswales significantly. And I authored the village's adopted water management plan for Lake Agawam and for Old Town Pond and Wickapong Ponds, which were 2 reports, and all of them featured bioswales. So there's still some debate as to exactly their benefit, but it is definitely good practice, and when done correctly, it does help water quality, and it supports native plant life, and there's a lot of good benefits from it. So I'm a fan of bioswales. The concerns that I raised really just had to do with process here. And I know that we have not in other bioswales in the historic district prior to my being a trustee, but it doesn't matter. It shouldn't actually have mattered for any of the trustees. We have a process in the historic district that says that any change of appearance to a property or any change to landscaping, I don't know if Alex, if I'm saying this correctly, but any changes to landscaping or appearance of a property in the historic district requires a certificate of appropriateness, including village-owned properties. So, it's unfortunate if in the historic district bioswales we've done in the past, we haven't done this. And in addition to that sort of letter of the law thing, you mentioned there's a planting plan on file at the DEC. I've looked into it. It is so small that it's impossible to read any detail or have any sense of the numbers or the visual impact from what the DEC provides. And otherwise, there has not been, I've not been able to find, nor have been provided, despite multiple requests, a planting plan on record in a village board for this project that's going on. And it's the most substantial bioswale we've planted. So it's really a process issue and a transparency and disclosure issue. Really 2 meanings to the term transparency. The process transparency, but I know the concerns that were raised with a similar proposed plan many years ago at both the ZBA and the Board of Trustees, both of which were probably inappropriate, but I won't go into those details. In other words, not required or allowed under our law for either of those boards to give a final determination or weigh in the case of the ZBA. But there were concerns expressed in both those forums about transparency of the viewshed on behalf of the public. And in fact, that was the reason why the plan back then was voted down 0-5 by the board. So I'm all for revisiting that. Maybe sentiments have changed, but we haven't seen anything on the public record. So I would at the very least hope that for bioswales in the historic district going forward, we follow that. And but I'm not passing on, and I can't really determine myself what the status is of this current one without that certificate of appropriateness.
Is it still possible for the ARB to weigh in on this?
Well, I believe the trustees were in a similar position, and they were, I believe that both the Conservancy and the trustees have been asked, and it's my understanding, to submit applications for a certificate of appropriateness. And I don't know the exact status of the response from the Conservancy, but the trustees apparently have said they will do so.
The town's trustees.
The town trustees, yeah, for the second bioswale that Bill mentioned, which is the median bioswale. Which, you know, is good practice, and it's unfortunate. And just state for the record, you know, I am a supporter of bioswales, and I don't want to discourage either the generosity or the directional environmental intent of the Conservancy on this. They're very generous. I'm a contributor, and a lot of people in this village are. So the concern is really just one about process. I would also say, you know, I've had discussions with many of you on this. The fact that it hasn't happened in the past, I just said that we haven't required a certificate of appropriateness in the past for bioswales in the historic district doesn't hold a lot of water for me, but I kind of hear what you're saying. And we also have the possibility as a board to consider amending the code to set some basic parameters in terms of transparency or average height or density of planting, and say if you meet these parameters, we can exempt you from a certificate of appropriateness. Sorry to say, Alex, but I think if we would develop those guidelines in consultation with the ARB and with Alex, because if we're looking for an environmental benefit, we could just create a streamlined process for what we all can agree are at least, you know, acceptable and exempted. So that would be my response to, we haven't done it in the past. Well, if we haven't done it in the past because it's a burden and it's not reasonable, then let's revisit that and adjust the code.
It's a way to gauge the effectiveness of bioswales. For example, on Cooper's Farm Road, we have 3 of them, but I don't think the water goes in there because the water goes on the other side of the street.
From my research, and I'm not an expert, but I've done a lot of research on this, it's really impossible to actually, especially in a large body of water like Lake Agawam, there's no way to know what this benefit will be. But in theory, biologically, there is some benefit, certainly to the nearby and adjacent water, and that will spread over time through the rest of the lake. And as an example to others, if there were more or less continuous bioswales around the lake, it actually could have pretty significant impact. And there is a commitment among a lot of those residents through the Conservancy or on their own to do that. A number have done it already on their own expense, and that's a great benefit to the village. It obviously benefits them, but I'm going to take this forum, and Len and I both heard it on Saturday, to say those residents are responsible for less than 2% of the nitrogen excess that's in Lake Agawam. Most of it comes from 1,500 other structures in the downtown village and north of Lake Agawam. So it's even the fertilizers that are used and the wastewater that's coming from their septic systems, a very small determinant factor in terms of the nitrogen problems and therefore the algae bloom problems in that lake.
Thank you.
Or did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I agree with much of what Trustee Coburn said, but to me, codes that are for the most part not enforced are not good codes. And if we literally say any landscaping in the historic district must go before the ARB, does that mean if somebody plants a hydrangea bush at their house, it has to go before the ARB? Does the village, which planted under Mayor Manger 600 trees in the last 3 years, every time the village plants a tree, must it go before the ARB to get approval for that tree planting? It seems to me that that puts a, if you're not going to make the people do that, then, and you're only going to enforce the code once in a while, then it's a pretty bad code. The head of the Agawam Conservancy, Mr. Jaffer, is a very respected lawyer, and he happens to differ with the opinion of our attorney that the code requires the LAC to go before the ARB in this instance, and he makes legal arguments, and I'm not a lawyer, and certainly everyone is entitled to their legal opinion, as our own legal, Eileen, as you have mentioned. There's many, many cases in the world that have opinions on both sides that judges have a very difficult time deciding, and sometimes they weigh in one way and sometimes they weigh in the other. However, I do feel that what Trustee Coburn said, that we should look at this bit of code and perhaps evaluate to make sure that it's much more specific and actually does what we intend it to do, and doesn't place unnecessary burden on somebody putting a hydrangea bush in front of their house, would make sense so we avoid this situation going forward.
Just so we're clear, the black letter of the law in that code says all the plantings have to go in front of the ARB. So it's not some tortured interpretation I made to torture the LAC. I was asked, what does the code say this? And it does say that.
I understand that, but
he's an interested party, obviously, too, giving a legal opinion that
and he
helps
cites
you get
various wetland provisions, and again, I don't know, but he cites it, and he's not the worst lawyer in the world. He's
And I don't want to argue this here now.
But he's an interested
Let
party.
me make, if I could make a couple comments. With respect to the trees, and I have a lot of respect for your opinions on all these matters, Roy. With respect to the street trees, I'm not a lawyer either. I think there's a very good argument to say that even if they're not in exactly the same location, if we're losing 300 to 500 trees a year and we're adding 600 trees or 200 trees a year, whatever the math is, if we're keeping up with that replacement, even if it's not in the exact location, if they're in certain parameters and all that, I think there's a good argument for saying you're not actually changing the appearance of the streetscape.
Just a few years, just last year, we planted a tree in Lake Agawam I went and watched the kids dig the hole. That was not a replacement tree. That was a new tree. Why wasn't that sent to the ARB?
Okay.
Like I
Well,
said.
the other thing I would say is the code under which this is done, landscaping's been in our code since 1989. The code under which this provision exists that you're concerned about, and I understand your concern, was one that you voted to pass, and the whole board did 5 years ago, in one meeting, in 10 minutes, in April of 2023. So, and it's not a long code, it doesn't take long to read. So if you really do share that objection, there was time then, there's still time now for us to revisit and modify the
Rob,
code.
if you had an objection about the LAC project, you could have raised it when they first started digging the ditch, but you waited until 3 months into the project when they had already bought the plants to raise the objection. So why didn't you bring it up at the beginning of their operation?
I'm so
instead of
glad you
waiting?
asked that, Roy. So let me answer that question really specifically. The first I knew that anything was happening down there was when I got calls in September as to why the lake was being drained. Because it was an odd time of year to do it in a fairly dry summer when the lake was below its average for September. So I spoke to Bill, and Bill at one of our meetings said, you very kindly stepped forward and said, we are draining the lake to help facilitate the drainage of the removal of the Phragmites and the Japanese knotweed. And the Conservancy has generously given the money to do that, and they've generously given the money to replant. I'll take responsibility for this. I assumed replanting meant restoring the grass and restoring the landscape that I and a lot of people remember. I'm sure you do too. You've been here longer than I have, which was about 20 mallow plants, about 6 tufts of grass, and about 4 or 5 holly trees. That was it. That's what I assumed. It wasn't until our Veterans Day ceremony, in a discussion with the mayor, when he said, and they've got a substantial planting plan that they paid for as well. That's when I learned about it, November 11th. So it's not fair to say that I knew about this for 3 months and sprung this on anyone. In fact, this was sprung on me, is my feeling, and I think it's been sprung on the public a little bit. That's not the Conservancy's fault. I have no beef with the Conservancy. That's our fault. That's the village's fault. There were multiple opportunities. This village renewed the permit with the DEC back in May. Was it in the public record? Was it announced? Was it discussed? You show me, please, where in the public record this plan has been presented, even just for informational purposes as a courtesy. It hasn't happened. So when you're saying that this is a surprise attack, which, by the way, Mr. Jiffer has said to me directly as well, I think actually the surprise attack is the other way around. That's my feeling about it, so we obviously have a difference of opinion on it. And we have not only opinion from our council, but we have other people who know this area of the code pretty well too. Because I did reach out to the building inspector, to Alex Wallach, our village planner, and to the head of the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation. Just asked the question, didn't advocate anything. Said if we're changing the landscaping on land that we own in the historic district, do we need a certificate of appropriateness? And it took maybe a minute for each of them to respond, yes. That was the universal answer.
I hate to bring our building inspector into the crosshairs, but I said, when I asked Mr. McIntyre, what gets something brought before the ARB? Why wasn't this brought before the ARB? He said, well, the building inspector decides whether or not something needs to be reviewed by the ARB. I called up Chris. I said, when you gave the building permit for this project, did you think it needed to go before the ARB? He said no.
There's no building permit. So he may have misremembered. There's no building permit for this. It raises a fair question. Do we have insurance for this project? Let me ask this question, actually. Do we have insurance for this project? Are we named insured by the Conservancy or the contractor for the village with respect to this project? That would be a normal practice, too, if we're letting a private entity, and this is not their fault. This is a procedural issue on our end.
But Rob, I mean, I know you say that just the fact that it had been done before doesn't make it all right in the beginning, but if people... all the bioswales have been done. The plantings were not approved by the ARB, and so all of a sudden another one comes along. Is everybody meant to go, oh, this one's different than all the other ones, let's go start doing something we've never done before? I agree with you that it probably should have been done if it's in the code, but it never was. So to blame everybody and say it's a surprise attack when people were just doing what they'd always done, and you can say that was wrong, but how can you expect them to all of a sudden say, oh, on this particular one, we're going to do it totally different than we've ever done it in the past?
I can't explain, and I wasn't here when past decisions weren't made, and when the opportunity, not just the opportunity, the obligation to enforce our code was there, and whoever didn't do it, I'll give them a pass. It was maybe an honest miss, but it was a miss. Every time it was a miss. If someone walked into your store, put an object in their pocket and walked out, and you stopped and said, I'm sorry, sir, you got to pay for that. And they said, oh, no, I've taken things before, I never had to pay. You would probably say, this time you have to. And what I'm saying is this time they have to. And at some point, we either get rid of the code because we're not willing to enforce it.
I agree with the fact that if you're going to, now, there's two things. Whether or not the code really requires it, village attorney and Alice Glee says yes. Mr. Jeffra, who is an interested party, says no. Okay, we'll just take that and put that over there. And the building inspector has now said go before the ARB, so that's been done. Okay. But it only could have been done when it was brought to everybody's attention to let's change the way that we've done it all the times in the past, and let's do it this way now. And now that that's been brought to everybody's attention, they're doing it. So I don't think you can fault everybody.
Have they gone to ARB? I think that's, I didn't know.
My understanding is that the Conservancy told Chris they wouldn't make an application. That's my understanding, but I haven't had an update in a couple of days.
I mean, that's news. I didn't realize that they were.
My understanding is that you told them that they would have some period of time to go before the ARB.
I didn't say that, but yeah.
I can just add that a plan was submitted to my office, and they were included in the legal notice that was published for the ARB hearings for their next meeting on, I believe it's December 8th. Okay. Yes, and so the notices were provided to the engineer for the project. We prepared signs for them to post on the property as we would for any
was
certificate.
That today or?
It was earlier, I believe it was earlier this week, and I think the signs are going to be posted tomorrow in anticipation of that December 8th meeting.
So what happens for the plantings out there right now?
I don't know whether they are or not, Eileen, but that's up to them.
No, he's saying they are. That's good news. Then we're moving forward, I think. And it addresses.
Right, thank you, Alex.
Yeah, sure.
So Alex, what happens for the plantings that are right there right now? There are all those trees there. I mean, if the ARB says that you cannot plant all those trees, is that possible option?
If they're denied, then yes, we'd have to address the enforcement of the decision by the ARB.
Let's see. They may say
So
it
they're not
looks
being
great.
planted yet. Then.
Or they have the right to accept, deny, or
Mark's
accept
here
with
now.
modifications.
They may be.
Right?
Let me just answer this for you.
Yeah.
It would be no different than if we had one this last week where somebody actually built something without a permit, and they bring it to you. The ARB looks at, we look at it as if it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
If we're fine with what it looks like, it gets approved. If we're not fine with what it looks like on paper, then we can ask for changes to be made. I think that's where you'd be in this case.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Alex.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to a really fun topic, and that's traffic.
I'm actually looking forward to talking about that. Chief, if you want to join us, because your boots on the ground and I'm drone height. The county road was restriped on November 12th or so, and it got off the ground, the new pattern got off the ground for us on November 17th, and we had some hiccups. Problems were several. Light sequencing was a problem and need to be tweaked. The chief and I met with the highway superintendent and our VHB consultant, Ryan Winder, to talk about fixes. And I think we left that meeting pretty optimistic that it should work as intended. Other hiccups that were extraneous to the project included accidents, which happen all the time. And yesterday was a tragedy of major proportions. But we've made some improvements. The town is working with us on creating the blinking light at St. Andrews and Hill Street. So do you want to fill in some of the observations?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday was a complete disaster, totally out of our control.
Maybe explain to everybody
on Sunday,
what happened.
On
Yeah.
Sunday night, around 10 o'clock, a alleged drunk driver took out two utility poles on County Road 39 west of the college. So power was knocked out, PSCG got notified, they didn't give an ETA. I would have preferred, it's not my call though, that they came either that night and or after rush hour yesterday to get things fixed, but it's my understanding that there was a lot of homes in the area without heat, so they showed up at 1:30 and they didn't finish up the project and the repairs until 9 o'clock last night.
And they shut down some
They,
lanes.
they shut down a lane in each direction on County Road 39. So you had one lane east, one lane west. But it was very odd because a lot of the navigation apps were still directing people to County Road 39, which was crazy. And everybody was obviously going on Hill Street. We had people leave here, didn't get home for 2.5 hours. So it was
backed up to Watermill.
It was backed up all the way to Watermill.
Well, then we even had an accident on Windmill Lane.
And then
Nugent
the
Street.
accident we had on Windmill Lane and Nugent Street didn't help things. So tonight it worked a little bit better. I was a little bit relieved, so was Charlie. Hill Street was still a little bit tight earlier, but we did have the flashing light going at St. Andrews, which was helpful. Chief Kieran from the town had a TCO under there because we can't staff it right now with our 2 officers
Well, I
up
saw
at the
one
intersection.
of our officers up at North Sea Road.
Yeah, we had 2 up there.
County Road 39.
Yes, yeah, they've been up there all week. We're going to continue with it tomorrow.
You want to talk about the cones stuff?
Yeah, we're gonna continue with it tomorrow. It'll be removed for the weekend, the holiday weekend, and then we're gonna regroup and go forward the following week, December 1st through the 5th. We had the drone up tonight and yesterday. Hill Street around 4:45 to when I got here was moving from Windmill Lane, but it got backed up closer to Halsey Neck Lane. Traffic was backed up on Lee Avenue docks. Captain's Neck was backed up. West Prospect was flowing. The light at McGee Street, after a couple of days, was put on a delayed signal in order to keep 39 moving east and westbound. So what was happening, traffic was getting backed up on McGee down around over the tracks a little bit onto Bishop's Lane. So I think once people learn that signal is going to, not switch as much as it did prior to this going into effect, we're hoping that they just stay on 39 because cars are really coming off of off of the railroad station by North Main Street. And the reason why we know that is Captain Wetter was up there today. There was a train issue, had to be repaired. So there's 3 MTA cops up at the train station, and he was watching traffic just flow down onto Prospect, to West Prospect and back around.
Yeah, and we have to deal with those trucks on
Yeah, the guys were out there
Prospect.
today and
Thank you.
and this evening as well.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah, sure.
Of both actually trustees and and yourself. I don't want to put you on the spot, so take whatever qualifications you need. But what's your level of confidence that we can get back to something approaching the seeming success of this pilot program back in April and May with the ongoing tweaks?
I think now's the time to do the tweaks before the spring season. I mean, now's the time to do it. I know that the motoring public is extremely frustrated with things, but If we just say hands off and just let things go, we're gonna be in the same position, if not worse, come the spring. So I'm hopeful that it's gonna work. Charlie's hopeful it's gonna work. And I think being that we have this striping that seems pretty permanent down right now, we have to give it a go for a little bit longer before
Is the light at Sandy Hollow, which is now pretty much, everybody on County Road 39 goes to one lane, which
Right.
allows the people coming up from Sandy Hollow to just keep going.
Right.
It's great for if you're coming from that direction, it seems to me, but it really seems to slow down 39 because you've got 2 lanes before the 7-Eleven, and then it's got to merge to 1 lane, and then you've got the Sandy Hollow coming in. Was that exactly the same way back during the trial?
Well, we had 2 lanes during the trial. But what, I
Did you
guess,
have a light at Sandy Hollow, and it was mainly green on 39, and then once in a while it would turn green for the Sandy Hollow?
yes, to go down towards Noyak, yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, that, the problem with that in the beginning of this second time we're doing this is the people that were going eastbound and wanted to turn down to Sandy Hollow, the light was cycling for them, but it might have been 4 or 5 cars, and then it wouldn't cycle back to allow traffic to move, so it was backing up into past 7-Eleven. So they have since fixed that. But yes, it was 2 lanes during the pilot, but the lights were also blinking too. And that's I think the big difference right now that
Blinking
we're
lights
trying.
makes a huge difference.
Yeah, we're trying to grasp that and try to.
That and the light at McGee, is there
Yeah.
any talk about having a left turn
They're
arrow?
not giving us the arrow.
Yeah, it's so.
They're not giving us the arrow.
After they painted the turn lane, they're not
Drives
giving
me
us the,
crazy.
it is nuts.
Yeah, county won't do it.
The other question I had is a philosophical one a little bit, and it's more of a regional issue, and it touches on something that Christian touched on before. It seems like even if we don't have accidents, and even if this program works, forget about future traffic, that we have a very fragile transportation network, that's very
Yes.
small incidents can have outsized impacts.
Go back
Correct.
to Bass.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, the potential closure of the highway or the railroad because of a bus incident.
5
or
days.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what the question is here, but it seems like there's a need for just more regional discussion about some long-term solutions. And I actually texted with the chief a little bit about, can we get maybe a protocol in place with the town and with East Hampton and the county to just, maybe set up some ideas and with the utility companies, just helping to underscore the urgency related to this fragility. Can we agree that if there's a fender bender, the first thing to do is to get the cars off of the road and to a safe place and get traffic moving. I know there's some more serious accidents, but we've had some situations, even with non-fatal accidents, where 1 or 2 lanes have been shut down, not recently, but 2-3 years ago, were shut down by the town or county,
Right.
I think actually state police, for 3 or 4 hours at a time during rush hour.
Right.
Can we, and I'm not blaming them, I'm just saying maybe we should, it's in our self-interest to think about any kind of standards or communication systems to
I think
minimize the impact of
a
those
couple of
events.
years ago, there was a double fatality up on County Road 39 by the Lobster Inn, and I know that road was shut for a good 8 hours. It was, and that's for the accident reconstruction. The ME had to come out. When the ME comes out, that means the person is
Here we
still on the
go.
road, and it just takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
So ever since then, and I know the town worked on it as well, the priority was to open up the roadway as quickly as possible, always, unless there is a fatality and you can't. And then there is to redirect and to just get it done as quickly as possible. So that has improved, but sometimes, with the mass amount of vehicles that are on the roadways, it's just, sometimes we have to shut it down, or the town or the fire department makes the call to shut it down for the safety of the first responders that are there, working the scene and getting the people
And is
out.
that communicated immediately to you and to the town chief, or do you find out through the grapevine?
Well, last
You know,
night
to
I
be
found out
honest.
through the grapevine.
Okay.
I had no knowledge of the accident that even occurred until Charlie told me that, hey, yeah.
Okay. Well, it seems like there's an opportunity for
Yeah.
improvement
Yep.
just on that. It's
Sure.
not intended as a criticism, just
No, no,
given
no.
how fragile we are.
Yep, agreed.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay.
Len, do you want to go on the
Sure,
cell
the
tower
cell
now?
tower.
Status?
We've fallen a little bit behind schedule with respect to it because in their process of selecting a contractor to do the work to erect the cell tower, they've run into some snags. They expect to pick a contractor by the end of next week, which will put them about 2 weeks behind schedule. The cell tower will be ordered, will be constructed off-site, and will be delivered here supposedly by mid to end of February. The building permit, of course, will come immediately once the contractor files the necessary paperwork. I've been in touch not only with Diamond Communications, but also with Chris Talbot, who assures me that once he gets the paperwork, he'll turn it around in a day or so. Construction should start in the spring, and we're expecting that the first carrier will be up hopefully by the summer. So we're on our way with the cell tower.
The Motorola
And the
equipment should
Motorola
be
equipment,
up.
right,
Yeah.
that's right.
So
Which is for the village
Yeah, for
first
the-
responders.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Right.
All right, thank you, Len. Okay, so Scott, how about correspondence to the board?
Yes, we have correspondence from Maya Hallenby, who says that the VHB traffic pilot shows a lack of understanding for the village traffic needs. Traffic measurements were taken during the wrong hours of 3 to 5 instead of 5 to 7:30, and opposes the decision not to implement the no left turn off of Lee Avenue. We have correspondence from David Cardali, who references a free assessment of the roads by a New York State TAP, which is Technical Assistance Program, Cornell Roads Program. It's 100% free. They will assess the roads and also help implement any identifiable improvements that might be pursued. Comments also include the objection to no left turn off of Lee Avenue, and proposes several multiple solutions to reduce village traffic. We have correspondence from David Rung, who raises concerns over the recently extended first responders exemption to the Southampton Village Ocean Rescue. Asks how much, it says it did not state, the resolution did not state how much or the limit of the cost of the exemption to other village taxpayers, and suggests that setting a specific assessed value caps at $5,000. We have correspondence from Jerome Antle, who comments, says that he experienced 58 minutes travel time from Southampton Hospital to Lenape Road, and if traffic lights were replaced with traffic officers, travel time would have been 15 minutes. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Scott, we can move on to suggested resolutions then.
Can you give me a minute?
Oh, yeah, sure, sorry. It's like the seventh inning stretch or something? Yeah.
You want to start singing "Take Me Out to
Yeah.
the
Hopefully, in the future, we can make that a little more of a lightning round, but I will say for the record, I appreciate you putting that on
Yeah.
for some of those updates.
Yeah,
I really
think
do.
it was great, very informative, and we learned a lot tonight. I thought, great idea.
I'm just glad I'm going to be able to smoke through Sunrise Highway when I get home. I ain't worried about traffic. This time of night.
Okay, sorry.
No worries, no problem.
Okay, number one, resolve the claims for the warrant dated November 25th, 2025, totaling $1,211,816.23, warrant number A12 General, $172,207.10, warrant number H6 Capital, and $454.34, warrant number T11 Trust, are audited and approved, and I'll make that motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Resolve the meeting of the minutes, resolve the reading of the minutes for the November 13th, 2025 Board of Trustee meeting is dispensed, accepted as filed by the village clerk, hereby ratified and approved, and I'll make that motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Roy?
Whereas there has been duly established in the town of Southampton a fire district known as the Southampton Fire District, as described in maps on file in the Southampton Town Clerk's office. And whereas the village maintains a fire department for fire protection, And whereas the district desires that such fire protection continue to be furnished to the inhabitants of and properties in the district now, therefore be it resolved, the Village Board of Trustees authorizes the mayor to execute a contract between the fire district and the village to continue such coverage, subject to the approval of the village attorney. I make the motion.
Second, and discussion. So basically, this is a continuation of the arrangement that Trustee Stevenson and I worked out 3 years ago with the fire district, where the split is established at 60% from the village, 40% from the district. That is actually the same ratio that existed back under Mayor Epley. It had actually slid a little bit, but I was able, or we were able to get it back to a 60-40 split. So this, the contract is actually up at the end of this year, December 31st. So we're trying to get this finalized to ensure that the village still provides fire protection to the entire district, including the areas obviously outside of the village proper. I don't know, Roy, did you want to add anything? Because we have had discussions with the fire district members as well as the chiefs. And it's really just a continuation of the arrangement that was already established, that we've been operating under.
I think there's a strong consensus that the current contract that we're looking to basically extend as is has worked very well, both for the district and for the village. Particularly in the village's case, we found that rebuilding a strong relationship with the district has been quite helpful in that when we present some special needs that are above and beyond the 40% contribution that they are required to make, they have been conscientious in reviewing those requests, and in many cases agreeing to fund those as well. So it's been a good relationship, and we are pleased that the district is willing to continue it under the same terms.
And Julie, you worked on this a little bit. Did you want to say anything, or no? Okay.
And what is the term of this contract?
I guess another 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, they've been 3-year terms, yeah. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Whereas the New York State General Municipal Law, Section 122B, provides in relevant part that any village may provide a general ambulance service for the purpose of providing pre-hospital emergency medical treatment or transporting sick or injured persons found within the boundaries of the municipality to a hospital, clinic, sanatorium, or other place for treatment of such illness or injury. And whereas the Village of Southampton provides such service to the residents and visitors to the Village of Southampton through the Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance, and whereas the service includes not just volunteer EMTs, but professional paramedics paid by the village, and whereas New York State General Municipal Law, Section 122B, further provides in pertinent part that such municipality may fix a schedule of fees or charges to be paid by persons requesting the use of such facilities, and further that such municipalities may provide for the collection of such fees and charges, or may formulate rules and regulations for the collection thereof. And whereas the Village of Southampton Board of Trustees believes that recovering the cost of ambulance transports will help meet the rising costs of ambulances, medical equipment, and EMS training, and reduce the burden on taxpayers by using insurance reimbursement. And whereas Proclaim EMS Solutions and Billing, a professional services corporation specializing in ambulance transport cost recovery in New York, provides such services to municipalities across New York State. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Board of Trustees authorizes the mayor to enter into a contract subject to the approval of the village attorney with Proclaim for cost recovery for ambulance transport services, and be it further resolved that the board hereby approves and adopts the annexed Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance billing and financial hardship policy, as well as the annexed Southampton Village Volunteer Ambulance Transport Rate Schedule. So this is just us adopting a ambulance cost recovery program. It's been highly successful across the state. New York State started doing this for ambulances, I think, back around 2020. So we did, at the mayor's request, some research on it. I spoke to other municipalities that did it. We located Proclaim, the village did. I don't know who did that actually, and anyway, that's what this is.
Quick question:
Sure.
In case of a hardship, who determines that?
We adopted in the policy. It has information on that, on how that will work.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
you know, but it's my understanding from talking to the folks at Proclaim yesterday that the individual just has to state that they are unable to make any sort of payment.
Yeah,
And
I
they
think
may-
they receive a couple of bills,
Yeah,
and
I was
then
gonna
there's
say
an
they get-
opportunity to
Right.
weigh
Get
in on
2
it.
bills, and if they don't
Right.
pay it, then
Correct.
you go
And
away.
just to let everyone know that for the village residents themselves, they will never receive a bill because it's considered that the taxes that they're paying
Right.
cover the cost of providing this service. It's really for those that don't live within the village. For example, if someone came from California and got into a car accident and needed to go to the hospital, obviously that person, they would tell
Okay,
you.
that's not entirely true. I mean,
That's what I was explaining.
everybody is getting the bill. You're talking about co-pays from,
Residents don't pay
you're talking,
co-pays.
the residents.
That's what I was
wouldn't
trying- that was
pay.
what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's
you
what I
made it
meant.
seem like they would get a bill.
Oh, no,
They
no,
will
no,
get
no,
a bill
no.
like
No,
everybody
no, no.
else.
They
Okay.
will not be assessed any
copay,
copay
right.
because
Out of
their
pocket.
village taxes are covering
They
that
won't, yeah,
portion.
they won't have an out-of-pocket
Correct.
expense.
They won't
Right.
see
if they're
that.
insured.
But let's, okay, so I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, and Roy, did you want to talk all about our meeting with the ambulance corps last night?
Sure, we had a very good meeting with the ambulance corps to explain the provisions of this plan and how it would affect their work, which is essentially, it won't affect their work at all. We wanted to make sure that we emphasize that this would not require any additional paperwork or form filling out on their part. It wouldn't require them to do anything different than the way they're already working. And I think I can say that there were a few questions from the audience, but in general, I would say in the vast majority of the ambulance corps was supportive and understood that the costs of everything related to medical care is rising quickly, from the cost of our ambulances, the most recent one that we have on purchase is $485,000, to the amount that we need to pay our per diems and our
Full-time paramedics.
Full-time paramedics is going up, and they understood that it's incumbent upon the village to do whatever we can to recover some costs to make sure that we have the best volunteer ambulance corps in the county, and I think we do. And the one thing they did request was just make sure that our residents understand that we still need their full support, and I'm sure our residents do understand that and will continue to support our wonderful volunteer ambulance corps the way they have in the past.
Yeah. No, and just for the public's edification, right now, the village is paying just in excess of $1 million for providing the ambulance service here in the village. The best estimates from Proclaim as to what we will be able to realize based on our past history of calls is between $200,000 and $300,000. So while this helps, it does not cover the entire cost of that operation, which is borne again by the taxpayers. But isn't that number approximately correct? It's just over $1 million for the ambulance? Yeah.
And Roy, can I ask you, I think I've heard this, and I just want to make sure it's the case, given how hardworking our volunteers are. This doesn't add an administrative burden to the
No.
ambulance drivers or the
No.
EMTs,
All
right?
they need to do is get the person as they get in the ambulance to sign that they're being transported to the hospital.
Got it.
And that's all they have to do. There's no additional forms to be filled out at all.
And it's actually federal law that Medicaid and Medicare patients sign for it to be
Good practice.
So
reimbursed.
I
For
think,
other
yeah, when
reasons.
this program first started in New York State, there was additional burden, but once they went digital with the PCR reports, they made these requirements regardless of this cost recovery
Right.
program. So now it's all the same.
And the only other question I had really was a business question, because we've talked with Proclaim. I understand from conversations with some of you that they do this for an awful lot of municipalities out here. They're seen to be sort of a leader
Yeah.
in this
In
space.
fact, just so you know, last night we asked them specifically how many municipalities on Long Island they do this for. It's in excess of 80.
Okay.
So it's a lot.
So, we
the
aren't
majority.
putting this out to bid, but it's a relatively new field, the service they're providing. They helped create it, is my understanding. And we also have a contract, I believe, that's cancelable if we
It
felt
is a
at some
cancelable
point.
contract. We didn't sign it yet, but I mean, because
Because it has to be approved.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But I mean, yes, it is going to be cancelable, and it is. We didn't go out to bid. Okay, just make them.
Because
No, no, that's what I was saying.
Oh, I
That-
thought you said
that-
we did.
No,
yeah.
that we didn't, and which,
It has a
raises a red
professional
flag,
service.
but
Right.
they
The
are.
research that we did,
Yeah.
and actually Julie and even you, Eileen,
Yeah.
said that, again, 90% of everyone is using Proclaim. And in fact, there was someone in Brookhaven who used a competitor
Yep.
and then actually discontinued that contract and went to
Yeah,
Proclaim.
Brookhaven, when they won the, I don't know, the governor's contest or whatever, and that's how they started their program. This is about 5 years ago, and they have, I think, 12 ambulance districts or 9, whatever it was. Maybe it's 9. They did RFPs, and they let the individual fire ambulance districts pick who they wanted to
The vendor,
use.
yeah.
8 of them picked Proclaim, the one picked another one, and they fired them and went to.
And just to further understand, we don't, they just take a percentage of what they collect on our behalf. I
Yeah, they
assume.
take 9%, except for Medicaid and Medicare, because by federal law,
It's capped.
you can't have a contingency fee.
But
It has to be a flat fee, and I
we're
think it's
not-
$10 or something.
But we're not paying them any kind of retainer or
Correct.
money
No,
out of
no, no,
pocket.
no,
It's
no,
just
no,
a
no.
percentage or a
No,
portion of what.
you know,
yeah,
there is
understand.
a small fee for the computer, I think.
Software setup or-
Exactly, but you get one for every so many transports you do for free, so in theory, probably won't have to
Okay.
pay for one.
Okay, thank you. I'm comfortable with
That's
those
all.
business terms. Flexible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's very good. So wait, we had a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, so resolved, the Village of Southampton Board of Trustees authorizes and retains Brian Egan Esquire of the law firm, the law offices of Egan and Golden LLP, effective November 21st, 2025, to initiate a lawsuit and represent the village therein against property owner 300 North Main Street LLC and any other owners thereof in connection with the unlawful demolition of the house located at 300 North Main Street in Southampton Village. The subject house has previously been identified as a contributing structure in the historic district and was removed without a permit and in contravention of the plan submitted by or on behalf of the owner and approved by the village. The mayor is authorized to execute a retainer with Egan and Golden with an hourly rate of $325, subject to the approval of the village attorney. I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
And can we discuss?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm not going to discuss the merits of this at all, but I just want to say, generally, this type of thing is very unfortunate. I sat on an ARB where a house contributing structure in the historic district was demolished in somewhat similar fashion, and it's no fun. And to some of the points made earlier in the evening, I actually watched, just coincidentally, 2 or 3 of the maybe 5 or 6 meetings on this structure over about a 8 or 9 month period last year. And our Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation did a lot of work on this case. They took very great care. They did an excellent job, in my opinion, in some difficult circumstances because of the nature of these applications generally, and at times because of the nature of some of the requests or proposals that were being made to them. And I feel badly for the ARB on their behalf and wanted to say that we do have your backs, Mark. And on the case like this, I'm sorry that it feels like a slap in the face, I know, and it shouldn't. And it's important to me that we make this commitment to set an example, because it's an example that needs to be, it's a line that needs to be drawn if we're going to have a historic district with integrity.
Thank you.
I'd make that comment.
What kind of remedy is usual in these type of circumstances? if
Eileen, maybe
any?
you can explain what is in our code.
So there is something in our code that would allow the village to recover the cost of the replacement of the historic structure, so, and also force them to rebuild the historic structure.
So it would be separately rebuild and basically a fine or a slap on the
Yeah, I'm not an
wrist.
expert on it, but yes, that's my understanding
how
of
it's
it.
written.
And
Yep.
Mr. Egan has done this before with another municipality.
And he was the former village attorney.
Here.
Several years ago, but so he's well-versed with the village and our
Right,
code.
but the house has already been built though, right? Or
Well-
it's in the process?
Yeah.
The house is in the process of being renovated. It was up on a crib of stilts with the first floor being reconfigured with the approval of the ARB. I don't know any other facts and circumstances other than to say it was determined, I guess, by at some point that it wasn't worth it, or it was too expensive, or maybe it wasn't, the engineering wouldn't
They
support
could
it.
have gone
But
back to the
They should have
ARB
come back
and
to the
and
ARB,
asked
exactly.
Well, you're
for,
right about
and
that.
consult.
at least notified the building inspector of the condition, which
course.
we hear that the building inspector didn't hear. we do need to set this precedent. It's a very slippery slope. Would set a very bad precedent if we didn't pursue it, in my opinion.
Well, when he learned of it, he went out to the site, the house, every
Who's he?
piece, the building
Building
inspector.
Yeah.
Every piece of lumber was gone, and they had actually constructed,
It
framed
happened-
out
A new house.
It happened very quickly.
Really
I have a
quickly.
friend who lives a few houses down on the other side of the street, and she said, I was here 2 weeks ago, and I was up on a crib, and I came back yesterday, and there's a fully framed house with all new materials. What happened? So it was very quick.
So,
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Ed.
Ed, you were going to do this one.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees approves an hourly rate of $3.25 for all special counsel and litigation matters only, effective December 1st, 2025. I make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just so people know, that is below what would normally be charged for litigation by this firm. This is a special municipal rate of $3.25 that was negotiated by our village attorney.
well, right, so our litigation rates were very, very low. In fact, we had raised the actual rate for representing the boards, and it was higher than the litigation
Yeah,
rates.
which
And
is not-
litigation rates are
not correct.
generally higher. I'm sure these firms are getting, upwards of $600 an hour from their private clients, so.
Thank you.
All right.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the village attorney and the village assessor to enter into a stipulation to settle an Article 7 tax lien litigation between the village and Eric Rutenberg related to property located at 82 Captain's Neck Lane, Southampton, New York, and further identified on the Suffolk County tax map as District 904, Section 11, Block 3, Lot 15. The said settlement reduces the annual assessed value by the amount of $2,900 for each tax year from 2017/18 and 2021/22. The total cost of the village is $2,814.89, as identified in the proposed stipulation negotiated between the village assessor and Farrell Fritz, who serve as the attorneys for the petitioner, Eric Rutenberg. Let me just quickly explain. This is this application. This property came before the trustees who serve as the grievance board no less than 5-6 times. It was turned down every single time for insufficient proof to warrant a reduction. The applicant has the right to go to Supreme Court. It's called an Article 7 proceeding. You file with the court. Ultimately, this whole case, all these Article 7s get put into the hands of an independent judge who sits there and oversees the, basically, I don't want to say battle, but the party discussion between the village and the applicant's attorney. So that was all supervised by a judge through Supreme Court of Suffolk County.
And their decision was to reduce the assessed value by $2,900.
It was actually that was an agreement. The
Understand.
judges strongly recommend settlements prior to having a call for a hearing.
Understand?
So I'll make a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion. I just want to say that, again,
Bill, can I
To
just
ma-
make a statement first?
yes, you can go first, sure.
I'd like to just make a statement. At the village's tax grievance day last February, the members of this board who were present, trustees Ananti, Mayor Manger, and myself, denied a grievance filed by Mr. Eric Rutenberg regarding his property at 82 Captain's Neck Lane. Mr. Rutenberg's attorney then filed appeal, as is the right of every taxpayer in the village to do so. An independent arbiter considered the evidence and negotiated a settlement between the village's tax assessor and Mr. Rutenberg's legal representative, which resulted in this resolution refunding $2,814.89 to Mr. Rutenberg. I, and to my knowledge, no other trustee had any ongoing knowledge, contact with, or influence upon the arbitrator who negotiated this decision. It is clearly an arm's-length, impartial decision. However, I am aware that appearances are often as important as facts and reality. Mr. Rutenberg is a friend of mine. He has contributed funds to my election campaigns. I have reviewed with counsel whether either of these facts would require me to abstain from this vote. They have assured me that they do not. In my memory, during the time I have been trustee, there has not been one negative vote cast against a tax refund resolution negotiated by an independent arbitrator. And in my opinion, voting against a settlement negotiated by an independent authority sets a negative precedent. I could vote yes on this resolution with an absolutely clear conscience. Nevertheless, in order to avoid even the slightest implication of ethical conflict, I intend to abstain from this vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. So, and I would just say that, yes, that Mr. Ruckenberg did contribute to my campaign, but I've had no knowledge that this was going on, except that we rejected his application for a reduction at grievance day. But again, he chose to, with an attorney, go to the independent arbiter and negotiated this settlement with the village tax assessor. Again, unbeknownst to me, I will vote aye because this agreement has been established, and I think we have to make good on the settlement that has been arranged by outside entities. But I just wanted to make it very clear that of that before I voted.
I'd also like to offer a clarification. He also contributed to my campaign. I do not have the relationship with him that Trustee Stevenson has in terms of friendship. And everybody who comes before us and appeals these things is entitled to the due process, and I will vote aye as well on this matter. But I just wanted to clarify that.
So we have a motion and a second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
I abstain.
You're abstaining, okay. Let the record reflect that Trustee Stevenson abstained.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees approves the following members of the Southampton Village Committee with a term expiring June 30th, 2026. Senior Services Committee, formerly named Senior Citizen Affairs Committee, Bonnie Cannon, Chris Brenner, and the current member Carolyn Sartain Anderson, newly titled as Vice Chair. I make a motion.
Second?
A question, who's the chair?
I've been asking for the last 3 meetings if somebody would be chair. Nobody wants to be chair, so I am still persevering, and we do have 2 new members, so I will ask the question again. Thank you for asking the question. I'm concerned about that myself.
Sorry.
And I was just going to say, Chris Brenner tapped me on the shoulder at the event on Saturday, and he sounded very excited with some interesting ideas and appreciated being part of this committee.
Right.
So congrats for getting him in.
He mentioned that to me as well.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the Stony Brook Southampton Hospital to hold its annual 2026 Hamptons Marathon Half Marathon Capstone event on Saturday, September 26, 2026, from 7 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at Agawam Park. Donations are generously provided to Southampton Youth Services, Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, Southampton Educational Foundation, and more. I will make the motion.
Now a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. So now we'll go to the comments from board members. And we will begin with
I'm happy to start.
Trustee Coburn, I'm sorry. I was looking for a note.
I'm going to keep it very simple. I appreciate the level of discussion that we have at these work sessions and that we had today. We can fine-tune some of it, but I learned a lot, and I hope other members of the board did on certain things, and I hope the public appreciates some of the update that they had. And so that's the only comment I want to make. I'm going to, Len, I assume you might cover Saturday? Okay. That's the only comment I want to make. Wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Simeoni.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Coburn. I second that. I think the discussion we had was very good tonight. The only thing I want to bring up is my Senior Services Committee. We've had 3 meetings in 1 month. The people who are participating are really very excited, very involved, and we do have 2 new members, and we have a next meeting in December, and we'll probably come into Mayor Mango with some proposals in the near future. I think we're making good progress. And other than that, I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Excellent, thank you, Trustee Simeoni. Trustee Stevenson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this coming Saturday, we have the, is it Saturday or Friday? It's Saturday.
Saturday.
It's Saturday, the Parade of Lights. I'd like to thank very much the Christmas Decorations Committee, Andrew Polaro, and Mark Parrish for all the work they do to put that together. I look forward to a great event with the lights and all the stuff going on in the lighting of the tree. With the coming of the holiday season, we also think a bit about those who perhaps don't have the resources to celebrate the holidays as much as they would like. At Stevenson's Toys, I think there's a Toys for Tots donation box. I think Councilman Schiavone has one at his office in Sag Harbor. And I just want to let people to know that, the Toys for Tots is an outstanding organization, and many of our gifts that are donated to them are put in the boxes go to them. But we also do quite a bit in terms of local residents specifically requesting that their gifts are distributed locally. And so this year, we have already exceeded in commitments from residents over $10,000 in gifts. So I'm happy to say we will be helping our Heart of the Hamptons, the Shinnecock Presbyterian Church, and also the veterans, children of our local military veterans, with gifts that have been specifically requested to be donated to those causes. And with regard to our veterans, there is going to be a Christmas chili celebration after the tree lighting on Saturday night, in which it's at Vets Hall, and they're going to have Santa there. And if you bring a toy to donate to the Vets kids, you'll be able to visit with Santa. Actually, you don't have to bring a toy, but they're encouraging you to bring a toy, and you'll get a free mug for your chili. The Veterans Hall is also having a holiday toy drive from November 19th to November 29th, where if you drop a toy at Vets Halls for the children of our local military families. And for more info about that initiative, contact Thea Fry or Lisa McWilliams at Lisa's number is 631-745-4045. So very happy to be able to spread some Christmas cheer to children whose otherwise their holidays would not be quite as bright. It makes me extremely grateful for the people in our community who help us spread that goodwill. So with that, I want to say thank you very much and happy Thanksgiving to all.
Thank you, Trustee Stevenson. Trustee Zananti?
Thank you, Mayor. So as Trustee Coburn alluded, on Saturday we had the residential septic public information session at the Cultural Center, which was truly a collaboration between the village, represented by Sheila Pfeiffer, the Lake Agawam Conservancy, represented by Lynn Arthur, and the New York Center for Clean Water and Technology, represented by Dr. Chris Gobler and Tom Varley. It was exciting to see the turnout, especially on the weekend before Thanksgiving. It was a packed house and a lot of expressions of interest for signing up for the grants and potentially the new septic systems. Dr. Gobler spoke explicitly to the health impacts of high levels of nitrates in our drinking water. Reported record-setting blue-green algal blooms on Long Island in 2025 and in all 5 bodies of water in Southampton Village. Tom Varley covered the solution and the grants available to pay for it, and these cards were distributed and collected, and the Village Hall has them if anyone wants to see about replacing their septic system. Basically with free money. Assemblyman Schiavone spoke to the importance of adopting the new systems. County Legislator Ann Welker led a panel discussion that included Gobler, Varley, David Rhodes, who is a septic design engineer, and Peconic Bay keeper Peter Topping, as well as Janice Shearer, the Director of Southampton Town Planning. Trustee Coburn wrapped up the meeting. We estimate about 3,500 residential properties in the village, of which less than 10% have new low nitrogen systems installed. The Environmental and Sustainability Committee aims to assist every homeowner who wants to sign up for the grant program, and I'll point to the yellow card. 50% of the residents attending signed up for the assistance with the septic grant applications, and others took cards, which are now available, as I said, in the lobby here in Village Hall. If any resident is a member of a civic organization, a house of worship, club, homeowners association, or even a neighborhood get-together, you can contact Sheila Pfeiffer or Lynn Arthur or Tom Varley to schedule a presentation, which can be done in person or by Zoom. This money won't be around forever. We encourage every homeowner to at least apply for the grant. Once you get to know how much money you have to work with, you can make the decision of whether or not to proceed. And don't forget, the grant money also pays for disruption to your landscaping. So that was a great day and a very important and I think well appreciated session. I also look forward to the Parade of Lights and the Christmas tree lighting this Saturday, the 29th. And I want to make a special thanks to Christian and the Planning Commission for the battery energy storage system presentation. It was very informative and gives us a lot to think about in terms of protecting the village. And with that, I also would wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Trustees and Auntie. So I just want to recap a couple of things and a couple of things coming up. I did attend the ribbon cutting at the Red Horse Market on North Sea Road on the 15th. It had a huge turnout. I was actually very, very impressed. And it seems our parking lot is always very busy, so I think they're off to a great start, and they are a welcome addition to the village. I then went over to Riverhead and joined our Chief Polis Walker of the fire department for an NAACP luncheon. It was extremely well attended. I think there was everyone from the county executive there to all the town political figures, and anyway, it was nice to be able to join him, and we had a great day. Today was a very busy day. I went to the Our Lady of the Hamptons Thanksgiving luncheon, which was great. Sister Kathy does an excellent job there. I'm always impressed how well behaved the students are. Then I went with our deputy clerk all the way to Yaphank to speak with the Board of Elections with 3 other mayors from Suffolk County about their decision not to make voting machines available to us for our village elections. This was a decision that was taken by the Board of Elections because they're changing the machines. They did say, however, though, that they have last year's model, and so the villages that were there actually signed up for receiving last year's model. I signed the village up for 3, as well as 5 privacy tables where you actually fill in the ovals with the felt tip pen. And so they have said they will make those available to us. Apparently a lot have already gone to school districts who are in the same boat as the villages, meaning that the Board of Elections will no longer help them with their elections. So the school districts got first dibs on the machines, but there were enough left that the village, I was able to secure 3. Then came back, and here we are at the meeting tonight. This weekend, aside from all the excitement that will be going on, the village is having a Shop Local Saturday initiative. This is something actually that I was very involved with when I was at the Small Business Administration. We had Shop Small Saturday throughout the entire country, trying to encourage people to go to smaller businesses the day after Black Friday and before Cyber Monday to make sure they shop in their local businesses. So the village is again hoping to get a lot of people to come and shop or dine in the village prior to the Parade of Lights with the fire departments, the tree lighting, and then the fireworks in Agawam Park. And a lot of stores you will see have actually put a larger version of this in their windows. And it's hoped, again, that we are able to generate a lot of people to come into the village on Saturday a little bit earlier than the tree lighting so that they can actually take advantage of our stores and restaurants. So I think that's a great thing. I know, Roy, you were very helpful with that as well.
And in talking to many of the merchants who have that sign, they will be having special deals for that day for Shop Small Business Saturday.
That's excellent. So I'm very pleased that has really taken off here. The Southampton Arts Center is going to be having a play. I think it's a Christmas play that was. They will be having that on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So you can get in a lot of things in Southampton Village this weekend. And then finally, I can report that Rosemar, the firm that is going to be repaving Hampton Road, said they will come in after Thanksgiving. And the reason why they've gotten so delayed is because of the striping and the restriping of County Road 39. But they will, they have assured me that they will, that we are on their list for right after Thanksgiving, and that Hampton Road will be repaved. Again, we got several $100,000 from National Grid because they're the ones that messed our road up with the gas hookups to the businesses on Hampton Road. They have, actually, the money is in our account. I'm sorry, the treasurer's not here. The money's in the account, and that's what we will be spending to repave the road. And then finally, we've got another couple of things coming up. Their East End Hospice has a Tree of Lights ceremony service, if you will, at the library, the Roger Memorial Library at 2:30, and that will be on the 7th of December. I attended last year. It's actually a very nice, solemn service for, again, those who want to honor their loved ones who have passed, and it's actually a nice thing to go to and attend. And also, the Presbyterian Church is going to have a Christmas bazaar. So I have there from 10 to 3, and this will be on the 6th of December. So if anyone wants to head across the street to the Presbyterian Church and participate in their bazaar, that will be coming up. But I think now I've covered almost everything. And with that, I again wish everyone else a happy Thanksgiving, and look forward to seeing everybody at the Parade of Lights and tree lighting on Saturday afternoon. Thank you. Do we have to discuss anything in executive session?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so with that, I will make a motion to close this meeting of the Village Board of Trustees. It is just 9 o'clock.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?